just pour it out, you know, like a chat or something in this post conversation. Okay, here now the recording's on. But somebody asked about, because the geography basically is kind of like a holographic setup, so what we perceive as actual organization based upon separation and difference, and you know that those alignments are more perceptions or frequencies than they are actual in space. And I think it's kind of confusing to look at how, because another aspect of that, something I was told is when we begin to move past all the lower levels and all these aspects in the projects that hold people back and are involved with these like demiurgic entities, is the truth is unveiled, and the soul, you know, it's what the soul always knows. And it's that literally each person is an earth. Each viewing soul incarnate is a complete earth to themselves. Nobody realizes it, so we all think that we're in one collective earth, when we actuality we're all, you know, the human family is expansed throughout a kind of like a fan of multitudes of parallels. And it's organized by a hierarchy of frequency. And it's not a linear hierarchy, it's a radiant one centralized around a solid core, if you will, but you can also invert it and look at it the other way. And it's basically proximity and proximal. And so, so I can't read the Zoom comments. They like blur when I try to get it the right one. I think it was about, so if the separation of densities has actually begun and the equivalent of air cities that are out of phase with our reality exist, are people going to, blurs out, are people going to, I have to try and, if anybody can read that, are people going to, literally going out of phase, meaning like a rapture or disappearance, something like that, exodus, migration, or will they just begin doing the equivalent of walking between worlds, or are people just experiencing more dreamtime reality? And is the creation of your own world just an acknowledgement of our sovereign right to be creative and manifest beings? Probably more than this creative energy. It's probably more than this creative energy co-creates, shares, and others. What does it mean co-create? So it's kind of like broken English there. But so the idea is, the whole idea is there is only the self as the soul, and there is only the creation of the self, or maybe the existence of the self, and then the creation of experience. Meaning each self, each actual observation aspect or observer agent, and you have to develop one of these secret tests to put somebody through it, and then if they come out and go, that was amazing, that's an observer agent of the universe. They come out and they're just like angry and they don't know what went on, or they just completely nothing happened. Like, what was that? What was what? And you know, there's nobody paying attention there. But we don't really have the information to develop these tests. The easiest way is to just see if they feel you and if you feel them. That's, you know, you can't fake feeling, in other words. You can fake everything else, you can't fake feeling. But the idea is then, what is the motivation? What is the true intent? What is the purpose, the direction? What is the outcome that should occur? Should some people create a world with flying cars? Some people where World War IV happens, where it's just continuous war, where there are no wars. The only real reality is the one where the person realizes their role as the creator. That's the whole point. And so then what would a person create if that was their role, if they were aware of that, if they were able to acknowledge that and exist in that, that role, or in that character role? So then, in other words, what are the preferences of the creator who has all possibilities at their fingertips? You know, what would they want to do? And the idea is, it's in the moment, it's based on feeling, and as well, it's non-dual, meaning it's non-polarized. It doesn't desire an effect from it. It's literally for the act of expression in itself, meaning as long as there is expression being experienced, that is the point of creation. There's no guidance, there's no dial of what it should be or what it shouldn't be. And so then, with that said, there's the idea, somebody mentioned this, of the collective reality. Will we end up, you know, I think it was Sandra, I think, of will we, it might have been Meryl, I'm not sure. I think it was Sandra. Will we begin creating a collective reality Or how will it play out? If it was a story, a movie, what's the next scene? How does it make sense? Will it just split up on the screen into 64 different, angles of different perspectives? How does it make sense in overall? And the idea is that that which is superficial around the ego, all of that stuff, it is temporary. It's not eternal. The only eternal aspects are that which are based within the truth of the self as the soul, and therefore all the temporary aspects, the basic idea is lower awareness, suffering, the feeling of lack, scarcity, imbalanced desires, things like that. They're temporary. The energy and the requirements and the format in the universe to create those experiences are not always there. The experience of the self and what happens when all of that basically is put in the proper hierarchy, or if you will, on the outside or below the pinnacle of awareness, which is just all encompassing, that's always there, because if you took that out, then the whole universe disappears and the movie's no longer playing. Without the audience in the movie, without the observer aspect, there's no movie. It doesn't exist. So you can have a horror movie, but you can't have no movie. It doesn't work that way. You can't have a movie that no one's watching because it's completely distanced from it. You can't have a redirection though, but if you do have a redirection, it is only potential. The only potential is for it to be temporary, because the movie begins and ends with the meaning that is directly derived from the original self. You can't come from, the temporary layer and begin the ascent away from and then back, which eventually what enables the ascent back to, or the descent away from the ascent back to. You can't have that start down here. It starts up there. We kind of drop down. We have this meat of a different experience of physicality or different nation or different personality or gender or whatever it is. And that's the middle. That's different for each of them. And then it goes back up to through the ascent to that same initial source that everyone comes from, every movie, every place, every plane. So the beginning and the end are kind of the same, but the middle, the meat, is what's different. It's a variety. The idea is, if you're there and you know these things, you woke up one day, you're a creator, you realize they sent you, the government sent you everybody a letter in the mail that only you can see, only your frequency particularly can actually access it, and it explains this whole thing to you with moving images and all that, and it's like you're a creator. Whatever you do after this letter, after you fold it up and put it away, is going to be your reality. If a person was like, I want $1 million, I'm going to do this, I'm going to go beat somebody up who made me mad or something, the person who experiences that and wants that is bound to temporarity or temporary, I'm going to start making up words now. It's a temporary occurrence. Temporality, I'm sorry. It's temporary. The person, it's bound to a temporary nature, and it cannot still exist, because eventually, it looks funny when mind confuses me, or maybe I confused my mind. That's the nature of everything. It's a mirror when we try and force what is into these outward expressions, because it's just a reflection. But if you do it right, you get a balanced view. Just like if I word this right, it'll make sense. In the same sense, if you create your reality right, it will make sense to everyone in the larger scope of what everyone will eventually begin creating after they do enough desire-based, physically relative temptation motivated things and ego pursuits, because eventually that gets old. If we seek satisfaction through those temporary aspects, it gets old and boring, then we go on to something else. If we continually seek for the self and we don't hold of what we're going to get in returns just for the expression and therefore helping others do that, it never gets old. It's always fulfilling. So the idea is, if you do the ego thing, eventually that gets old and ends. And that, if you make your whole reality off of that, eventually that world gets shown through as the illusion, and it merges with somebody else's who was there making the higher reality. And it was, for everybody, but you don't experience that. You just end up frequency-wise having experienced where your world merges into that world, and eventually your world went from this and temporary horror period, whatever it is, the dark ages, and it goes into that. The guy who always, or lady who always was doing that, was always in the golden age. He never went into the middle ages, he or she. It was always there. From their perspective, if you wanted to say who's who and what happens next and all that, they would have been always in the main reality, and everyone eventually merged into that one. That's why the collective, majority, and the ones who have been in the heart since the beginning are the ones who never left the tether for the human race back to what we call eternity, or what we call heaven, or the golden age. And so the people who are creating that collective, they're already there. They've always been there. They never left. Everyone who's gone there, their theater basically merged with the theater of a horror, flick or something that runs until it basically loses its effect, its charm, its hypnotic value to cause fear. Eventually, the person, if you you're 120 years old because you've been in the theater for that long, and at first you were scared of the movie, and now you're that old, it's going to either look really stupid and silly, or it's going to be dumb and annoying, and you're going to develop this type of the opposite effect, where it's literally has not even no effect, but the opposite. So it always changes up. If you go with that and don't give yourself something to latch onto as everything changes, and the you that made that choice can stay within that world that ever changes, and you don't have to change. You become always who you always were and always are. It's kind of like saying you don't actually choose to create. You just let everything be what it is. Ultimately, it's through, because they taught us about this, and this is what's going to happen in the world. And the people that aren't ready to do that are the last to begin to do it. That's how it works. Because if, for instance, everybody in America was given that letter right now, it would be really weird, really, really, really weird. But it's kind of already what's happening. That's why America's going the way it is, because we're collectively creating what happens next. But and so the idea is that when a person knows that, views themselves or their self in reality from the perspective of the creator, does not hold to the values which are illusory of the ego personality and the preferences that we basically that are shaped out of desire and a binary response or getting something, some type of physical satisfaction. The reality that you shape is the supreme reality. There is no reality. There's no single reality. But if you were to, technically, theoretically build your reality off that, then that is the supreme reality, because everyone eventually will move into what lasts for eternity. And that selflessness is what lasts forever. It's the temporary, personal, ego-based values that are only momentary. They don't stay forever. And so the last part of this is that it's not that you're doing it for yourself in that point. It's that you'd be creating a reality that enables everyone else in that reality, whether real or fake or you or not you, to be the creator. And at that point, it's like you're giving yourself to the realm you belong to, if you will. And in that sense, it's like securing yourself in an over reality that if another person is going to create in one way or the other, because they feel from where you are to any degree of separation from that, that will be able to merge and fit into the reality you would be creating by not holding to personal ideals. And you'd literally be creating the over reality, the extra dimensional matrix that all other realities merge with and slowly lead up to and fit in. The original, basically, like, we don't have words for them, Christ beings or Essenes or Hathors or Egyptians, Chemicians, and Kemetians, certain people, certain groups. The ones who remained in the heart and developed those blueprints, that's what they did to create this whole place. And the ones who basically took that apart and created all these side channels that they can tax people for because they have stupid values that are more or less, for their personal satisfaction. So it's, it's not stupid. That's me even being my personal, coming from my angle. It's just the way they did it. Those are the temporary ones that we've actually been in. It feels like forever, but it's been like a fraction of what actually is to exist. And what we're experiencing and all these destabilizations and personal conflicts and fear arising in people is the merging of everyone's individual little reality back into the congruent and collective whole. And everyone, basically, the guidelines is we have to get over fear and get over the ego, because this is actually less complicated than what's actually occurring. And if people are used to being in the mind cage, like a goldfish or a cup, with a glass or a glass tank and a piece of glass in the middle, and you remove the piece of glass, but it's been there so long that it doesn't go to the other side, like flies with the saran wrap over it and they don't leave anymore. If people act that way in the reality where it's fully unveiled, there's no limiters, there's no devices that are holding people back, the DNA begins to activate, they will literally manifest the monsters of their nightmares in full, three-dimensional, four-dimensional glory, which is also part of what this is all about. These underworld beings, these, whatever. They're nightmare beings. They don't, technically, one, they don't exist, and two, they don't have any power over the creator aspect. They can only, it's literally like Monsters, Inc. The more, I haven't seen this movie, but my nephew's watched it, and I've heard about it, that it's like, that makes sense. Kind of makes sense. They put it all in the movies and the media. The more fear they get from the kids, they get points and credits for the little empire of darkness that they work for. And one, not temptation, but one, basically the monster, the fallen angel, or the thought being, developed free will. He said, well, and it was like a fluke, an accident. I made this kid laugh on accident, and I got like 10 times the amount of points for the amount of energy that we all get from fear normally. What if I just hide from the empire and make everyone laugh from now on. All the kids, I'll just tell them jokes and tickle them and make them laugh and stuff, and I'll get more money that way. So we found out that the empire is actually the opposite of powerful, and empire is actually like the no-pyre. It's the negative version of that. Because if you don't have to cause fear, if you allow and you enforce and encourage the others, both of your energy amplifies. It multiplies by orders of magnitude, because that's the actuality of what is. By taking and feeding into the role of having to take, everyone loses, even the person doing that. And so the whole thing is a trick. The monsters, all that stuff, the nightmare realm is all it is about that it cannot last and cannot persist. So if you identify with that and create with that, that reality ultimately doesn't exist. And if you identify and create with the idea that simply you're the creator, and anything that is relative to that notion of you being the creator, as well as any other observer aspect having the power of the creator, that's going to be the whole reality. That's going to be the whole realm, because that's where we came from. And then there's a whole bunch of weird stuff about if we do that enough, and there's all these grooves, if you will, of everyone doing it, eventually we can actually alter space-time with our perceptions, with our heart and our mind. But at that point, it's not a beating heart and a thinking brain. It's just energy waves that are pretending they're shimmering, into these ideas. And one day it could be this way, one day it could be that way. And each day at that point could be 10,000 years, 1,000 years. Time and space basically becomes our dreamland at that point when it's fully active. But that's the point. We can't have it all now and everyone's doing that. It wouldn't make sense. Nobody would know what was going on. So the pathway to that, the ascension, the stair step up to that, and slowly people experiencing it, that's what is taking place. That's what's planned, and that's how people are more or less herded into different countries and what we call nations and geographies, which are actually frequencies and times. The time zones are actually timelines. And that's the full version of what I said before about the agencies having it all mapped out and knowing they can send the guy up, go through the craft, and because it's frequency, they don't go anywhere. The craft doesn't burn fuel. It sets up fields, and they tune the fields to a certain degree, and then they zap themselves across space-time to where they were supposed to be. And if they do it right, it's in a different dimension or parallel. And they manage all of that. And yes, all the original people who know that and have been in the heart where everything's telling them to be something else, they're adepts at doing that. They naturally travel based upon those frequency fields rather than the roads and the script of programmed automated behavior and what we're being told. And that's what we're doing anyway. So, since if you just basically accept that and stay with that and live in that, that never changes. It can't change because there's nothing to change that. There's no reason to, and there's nothing greater than that. If we're like, well, I don't know, I'm not sure, that's going to change. If we're like, well, okay, but I want to do this, and this is some personal satisfaction, that's going to change. Everything that is relative to that gets left behind it and is moved on. So maybe I made that more confusing than it should be, and the person's like, what? Maybe that helped. I hope that helped. Thank you for the question. It was a good comment.
Well, when people ask you, when people ask you, the first original questions, that you are answering, is it all those questions is all of the above, whether they're going to stay with the collective, whether the cities of, the emerald cities are available. Yes, they are. Whether you're going to stay with the collective of your choice. Yes, that's another perspective, and it's all a matter of your own choice. Whether you want to perceive the emerald cities, or you want to stay with a certain collective, or you want to change the nature of your own collective consciousness. All of the above is possible, all of it.
Yep.
And all at the same time.
That's the most difficult part of
That's
answering.
the most difficult part. To explain that part is the most difficult part.
You could literally say anything and it would be the right answer, at least for one moment in every trajectory. It's almost like I could just mumble sounds and I'd be correct. And eventually, if I do that for the entire time after I lay the foundation, eventually they'll be like, well, what if it's this? And that's the right answer. And that's what people have to not get in line with again, but accept. They just have to accept, which is the nicest thing, not nice, but the most powerful thing, because it just means that you can create anything. It's whatever you want. The answer is whatever you want. Eventually, you're going to want what everyone wants, which is unlimited creation, you know, because what else would it be? And that's scary to a lot of people. That's the main thing, is that it's scary.
It is scary to experience simultaneity of being is something else. It's and I can see how the psyche can get pretty jittery about it, because the human being right now, our nervous system and our body is not able to do that right now. So please don't try it. You have to, you know, have to wait for the body to be recalibrated to simultaneity of being, because people had to die and get out of this outfit in order to experience it. And now we're not dying, we're changing, the body is changing for us in the here and now, so we can have simultaneity of being. And that is the huge difference that never ever happened in this realm of existence before.
I'm glad you said that, because that's like the second most difficult thing to tell people. It's like you pretty much died from your original plane to get here, and you know the next thing that can happen is not something magically worse than that. Is that you're returning back to more full power in ways you can't imagine. But that's the idea. That, you know, there are tests that have done this. The big thing about the secret projects, and maybe, you know, there's a reason this is being recorded, the space program, and not the, whatever you want to call it, there's charades everywhere. If you can do whatever you want. Well, I want to trick everybody. All right, go ahead. And so there's programs everywhere. It's all just BS, and they're making stuff up. Or not making stuff up, but it's like it's guided disclosure for a specific partial outcome, for somebody's personal satisfaction. And it's not necessarily the person presenting it, it's just keeping the old system going, of fear and dominance, things like that. But the idea is the real aspects of the projects, the unacknowledged special access programs, the actual space program, which is closer to inner space, and it began basically with the secret groups that studied the soul. All it is how to operate in the soul realm, and unveil the soul. That was the original space program. That was the beginning, that was it. Not, you know, rockets shooting up, it has nothing to do with anything. I mean, it does, but it really doesn't. And all of that was literally about how to manage this ascent, what is inevitable, which the first inevitability was the fall from grace, the forgetfulness of all the glory of unlimited potential. The second inevitability is the return, the fact that eventually people are going to figure it out. Somebody, you know, lied to them basically and started this whole thing, and they're going to return. And so it's how do you safely return or manage this descent back towards what is basically it's the writing of what is currently reversed. And it sounds insane, which a lot of, I mean, you run a ball in space, like basically like fleas or something on a big piece of metal and rock that spins and makes it like, okay, that's crazy. But the idea is, and you know, when it came from monkeys, but now we use computers and fly planes, that makes sense. No, that's worse than being in an electromagnetic matrix of time and consciousness, because that has a reasonable, you know, correspondence with who and what you are as a spirit. The other thing is just a bunch of particles bouncing around, mashing together, trying to make sense of things. No, you know, in other words, if you're more aware, that's the crazy reality. But the idea is that everything is reversed. It's not that we're going to die. It's that this is the perception, the closest thing you can actually have as an unlimited being of being dead, of being cut off from your infinite creative powers and being confused about who you are and lost in time. And, you know, I kind of wanted to mention the projects are them, they figured that out, and people knew that. And so they're developing ways to give people the opportunity to align with fear or in a subjugation, or align, in line's a, you know, bad word, corrupted, if you will, because it's not a line, it's backwards, it's a curve, it's a spiral. But to accept their power and align with self-empowerment and the overcoming of fear as the soul which knows only joy. You have to accept, you have to give a path, you have to have a fork in the road, you have to devise an initiation, a plan of them to have either or, because if you force people to do it, all you do is create hell on earth. That's the whole point. You can't force a soul to awaken. You can't force somebody to be happy. try to force yourself to be happy. It doesn't work. You get the exact opposite. It feels like you're, a robot or something. It feels like you're, try to fall asleep, try to force yourself to fall asleep, get all your energy up and charge and get that kinetic potential charge and force yourself to fall asleep. You'll stay awake the entire night. As soon as you forget about that object or focus that's keeping you focused there on that one point, you'll pass out and wake up in the morning. And so that's part of that idea of having to trick a person who's not seeing. That was the stuff that could have been recorded, how there are people who are not seeing in the sense of the soul. And, and everything else everybody said about how this has basically been confronted in a way in this talk, which is, part of what's happening on the planet. And the person who's not seeing there is not present. You can't argue with them because there's nobody there to argue with. They're not present. They're sleeping. That's the whole point. It's just brain chemicals bouncing around. And that's not a person. That's an object, an animal, a robot. A person, a human, is a souled being inside of this physical vessel that is more or less, realm specific in reference or in correspondence to frequencies right now. And the original is literally a multidimensional being that can traverse from the high plane down to here. How do you think we got here in the first place if the position we're in now can't go back? We were in an original form that can go anywhere and has no limitations, but matches the outline of a human, the representation of a human. This is a ghost image of that. It's because we've simply accepted the same ideal so long that it's solidified into what we consider a solid form that doesn't go away, or keeps us here. That is undone eventually. That is overcome. The boundaries are dissolved, and it happens through choice, and it has to be through choice. Because if it's not through free will, that means the being that is through the body from the original place has not made the choice. And if they didn't make the choice, there's no one there to make it. And you only get the imitation of it or the illusion. But that is what the projects are actually about, unveiling the soul, knowing we're immortal, and then coming up with a plan of how we're going to convince everybody that they're actually immortal. And, that's the point of it. It's not, be afraid, blah, blah, whatever. It's that you're immortal. The whole point, or your soul is immortal. It lives on beyond death. And then there's the whole rest that you're in. There's in multiple Earths. There's almost virtually infinite parallels. And they're not infinite because that would be a little bit, it wouldn't be focused enough to have the meaning of what Earth has now. But there's more. It's just so complex. It's so powerful. It's not, we went to Mars recently. There are literally thousands of Earths and thousands of Earth civilizations that we're in contact with, and they have portal devices that can send anyone at any point there that they want. And right now, what you think of as space is frequency set up in different angles of perspective, and there are multiple timelines overlaid over what we consider the current Earth civilization, and they've been vibrating in unison, synchronicity with each other, and that's where we get something like the Mandela effect, or what was Mandalaed into Mandela, which is just another ploy of taking away from what it really is, which is the mandala of the soul, which is also what the CERN device looks like. And so all of this leads up to that. The end is that there's no fear, there's no suffering, there's only joy. You're an unlimited creator, basically in a temporary position where you could believe for a second that that's not actually what's happening. And some people never left the heart, so they never really fell for these illusions, these lies that says, go to war, we'll trick you, be afraid, feel scarcity. Some people never bought it. And they're like, okay, you want me to, but clearly that's because you want the fear, and the laughter is more powerful. And, and if anyone like that noticed those monsters coming around trying to get the fear, they laughed at them because they realized that's what they want. They want the fear, and they can't have it, and that's why they're here, and that's why they have to try so hard. And it's because it's projected power, not real actual power, and they know they have the actual power. So it only reinforces it and only furthers it along. That's what the actual projects were about. It's not about all the distractions, all the scarcity, all the weird stuff, the fear. That is part of this, because some people, if you get a big color wheel of people, some people are going to end up creating that, whether inadvertently or knowingly. But the idea is that all things are possible, and when we accept that, we create a collective reality stream of multiples that are congruent, and basically they're in respect to one another, meaning nobody's cut out of each other's reality. And it's the only way you can have a virtual experience that isn't actually happening and actually communicate with each other across space and time, where that's the only way that souls, which are actually a part of this cosmic light sheet of some sort, actually step down into vibration and live collectively in a real civilization where, you know, we describe that as heaven, where everybody has what they want, if you will. But that's also the place where you don't want things. So how do you have what you want? It's like a paradox, but it's what we're destined to experience.
Also to understand, you know, that through the multiple realities is just an aspect of your soul that is projecting itself in there. It's not the entirety of who you are, yeah, as a being, yeah. Just like an aspect of my being, I can an aspect of my being is in a matrix. An aspect of my being is in the collective consciousness of humanity, as they are progressing through so-called the projects that the elites are doing. Yeah? It's just one aspect of my being. It's not the totality of who I am. It's and when you have that understanding, then you are not so freaked out, you know, that you are, you know, because it's not like, it's like, for example, okay, now I'm here in my bedroom, but I think of something, it's just a portion of my consciousness. I think of something outside of my bedroom, yeah? But it's not my totality of my being, it's in my bedroom or outside of my bedroom, huh? It's much, much bigger. It's all that is. And that is where, when beauty and awesomeness and the experiment, you can conduct your own experiment that way when you know that just an aspect of my being is this part of the cosmos. You know, I have many aspects of my being. Some of them are in Sirius B, some of them are in Venus, some of them I can't even mention names to anybody because they won't know it. They're out of this cosmos altogether. Yeah? So this is where it gets complicated to us to explain, for us to explain what really, really the magnitude of the beingness. The beingness is, we're gonna talk about the beingness until foreverness, and we'll never be done.
Well, that was actually the second part of what you're inspiring. There's really no word to describe what, you know, basically there were situations where this was proven. They can set up a field, and if, you know, you walk through it, you end up in another reality based upon where your intentions are, if you will. But the first impossibility or difficulty to explain, I'm gonna like write this down now because I'm not. The first is what that I can't even remember what the first one was. It's recorded though. The second is that I think the second is that you create whatever reality it is, something like that. I'm hearing it. The third is on recording. The third impossible aspect of this to explain is that with all of that was said, these multiplicities, simultaneities, these multiple realms, all of that, the creation, you know, the aspect that you're creating, it's literally the closest thing to magic, or it's way more worse than magic, because there's not even a trick aspect to it. It just is what it is. Is that basically all of that is still just one page in your soul's book of life, and you're not even fully here yet or at all, because you can never do that. It's as if you're the whole wheel as well as the center. It's not even that you're on the center and there's no actual outside. It's that you're the actual outside and the whole part of the center, to the point where, say somebody dies here, or some aspect of a person in some physical realm, or it completes its trajectory or whatever it is, you're still active somewhere else. And it always happens to the point where when you're fully present here, there's something else that you're fully present as or in. And when this linear experience ends, you go over to that one, and there is no side to the circle, so it's infinite. It continues. And the idea is that consciously as a human, we'll never be able to fully perceive the completion, the vastness of our true being, that we only get so close that we eventually basically just accept it's not going to happen. And really, the experience of realizing we're so vast that we'll never know absolutely how vast we actually are is just as stimulating and satisfying, if not actually it's way more than actually knowing, because the point is, to know it has to have a specific end and beginning, and to know I mean by consciousness, not by pure awareness and feeling, because you can feel it, you just won't have a word for it at that point in time. You know, you can still be you and have it, but you're not going to be able to write a story that is it. It never ends. That's the point. But the idea is, what if it did? What if you had the book and it's like, and the end, and the soul never had anything else? It would suck. It would be the worst thing ever. You'd have to use something more forever. You'd never get over that. So that's the whole point. It's set up for perfection, and it can't be distorted or destroyed, only delayed. And that's like the third portion of it, that not only this whole realm we're being beamed from through the aspect of soul, you know, reality or nature, and we're literally dipping into a plethora of experiences. And it's not it's literally like each of the fingers of like an 8-armed being is dipped into different pots of different, you know, waters or, you know, milk or whatever it is. And we're in one of the finger in one of the pots, to the point where that whole system, when we find a solution to it, it's literally just one game, one daydream of basically the easy, because we've done this in the projects. They have databases, they have all this stuff. But eventually you stop explaining it. They keep asking questions, and it's like, look, you're not going to get it. You can look at this. I'll show you 3 pots, and you'll suddenly get it all. They show them that, and it's like, oh, it never ends. Whatever you think is there, there's always a flip side to that, and it goes on. And then when you have that, and you're like, this is it. After you just let it sit for a second, and then you realize that's the half of it, and there's another event of it. And it's not fractal in that sense, because the same foundation of self and non-self and truth of, you know, an proximal relativity to a core is repeated in each one of them. It's like a, you know, sitcom or something. But the variety of the experience, the flavor of those colors, you can't have more than 7 colors or something like that. You can have the mixtures of them, but they're the main primaries. You don't have more than that. They're never changing. The paintings that you could have infinite, just keeps going on and on and on and on. You can paint whatever you want, whatever you feel. It just keeps going. And so that's the world, that's the realm. And we're the painter back at some base, some core with the canvas, and we're just dropping them out. And consciously, we only go from one after another, but we can never get to 100% consciously. It wouldn't make sense. It would simultaneously explode and no longer be ourselves, or, you know, it's not possible. But we can get to 99.9999% and then go on to 999 and go on for infinity, for eternity, to the point where we can continue to get so close that it feels more, and it's basically like a roller coaster that we go up and it continues to climb, and we can push the limit more and more and more every time. That never, basically the satisfaction never ends. And again, if we have that done, day 72, you finished, you're God, now you're the person, the limited being is the whole being, it would suck. We'd never want to come back to the universe again. We'd never come back. This one, we can't finalize it, we can't perceive it all at once. We could do this forever, and it doesn't get old. There's just these frequencies, these drab colors that they, you know, like these crazy, like horror gore paintings that people keep pumping out. Like, that's boring now. It's old. It's not invigorating anymore. It's not tempting or like, you know, cliche or something like that. No, it's old. So that gets old. The same frequencies, repetition gets old, but the variety never ends. And the experience of variety is why this all is occurring. But again, the main idea is that they go through all this stuff and show you everything, and then they go, all right, we just made all that up. It's like, what? It's like, no, it's actually happening, but technically all that is too, and it's the exact opposite of what we just told you. It's everything exists, anything you can imagine, it's all there. So it's very strange, but it's like the 3 impossible, you know, notions that are actual.
It's interesting, Og. I just joined in. Sorry, you guys. I went over to the neighbor. I thought the chat was over, so I'm just joining in again. You're talking about painting and canvases and how something gets old and you have to keep creating new or it gets old. Me as an artist, I don't stick to one style because I get bored. So I do like I paint anything. I've gone through so many different levels of painting, and I flip into one state of painting and then I go into another. I go into realism, I go into abstract, I go into cartoon. It depends on how I'm feeling inside. And it's like, I just want to express. I want it to, I don't want it to ever end. I just want it to keep going. And then I start a series. So I paint like one tree branch, and then that goes off into another, and it keeps going and going and going. So it's just, is that what you're kind of talking about, Og? Yeah. It's like it's creation, and it's like it just keeps going and going and going. You guys have to fill me in a little bit. I just came back here.
We have gone wild.
Yes. We are wild.
Are you guys drinking
We're
wine?
warriors.
No, not
Wild.
yeah, not
We got
even.
wild.
The wine of heart. The wine of heart.
Awesome. I missed out. Here, I thought you guys were
I was
ending
drinking
it.
off of y'all's spirit, so
Rick.
it's everybody.
Awesome.
I'm in bed. I put my pajamas on, brushed my teeth, flossed and everything, and I'm in bed now.
And you can't turn us off, Sandra, huh?
I'm having a glass of wine, so.
Oh, I can't.
What's that? Oh no, it's
Stop this. I have no right of stopping this flow that is happening here. So I'm not going to, because I'm loving it.
Well, I'm glad. I'm
Whisk
glad.
is
I was
flowing
like,
here.
this is awesome, you guys.
well, my cat was stressed out and now he's purring, so he
Oh,
wanted attention.
that's
Yeah.
cute. Where is he? Let's see him.
Romy, he was looking at Tracy. He really liked Tracy's energy. Where's the light? I don't know. Romy,
Who's Tracy?
Maybe
Trudy. I mean, sorry.
You know what? Okay, this is funny.
It's your sister, right?
Yeah, I have a sister named Tracy. And
Well,
you know,
I've seen that on your page.
people will call me Tracy all the time, and they don't get Trudy, you know? And my only sister, my blood sister, well, she's not my only sister. I have other sisters, right, that aren't blood, but she's Tracy. So I get called Tracy a lot. So there you go.
Romy,
Is your name,
hi, Romy.
real name Augustus?
Say hi.
Odd?
Augustine.
Augustine. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I
You wanna
thought,
go by that?
yeah.
So I apologize, Trudy.
Oh, no, don't apologize. I just find it really intriguing when somebody calls me Tracy because I get Tracy a lot. Yeah.
But it slipped out.
No, that's okay. Don't apologize. You don't have to apologize.
But Romeo was watching you the whole time you were talking.
Aw. Hi, Romeo.
Now he's being shy. Romy, come on.
Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo?
Look over here, Romeo. Look online.
So cute.
He Skypes with many people.
Aw.
Okay. That was really, we needed a little break, Og. We needed a little break with Kat after that speech.
Oh, did I blow it? Did I blow Og's rant?
No,
Yeah,
there's no beginning or end. I could go forever and stop and start. We could have made the whole thing with the cat if it was, up there.
He's full cat.
It looks. They're different beings in their own right.
Og,
There's so
I
much
had
stories.
to actually create.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
He's purring like a storm right now.
I had to create paintings that were multi-dimensional levels of reality in a tree. They start from a tree.
That's beautiful.
And usually the tree has like a heart in it. So I just came up with this stuff on from my heart. So it has the heart, and then it has like this, and then this is actually where I live. So there's like Giant Head Mountain, and then we have bike trails, and then we have quails around us and fruit trees. It's all multi dimensions of reality. The sky changes, and there's different kinds of fruit hanging on one tree,
And your red wine, over there I see.
there's always wine. There's always a wine in it.
That's the glue.
Oh, and paddleboarding. I
wine.
love stand-up paddleboarding, surfing, kind of.
Mm.
There's so many correlations there. That's closer to reality than, like an image of a skyline. That's like the tree, and then it comes from the core and branches into the different fruits or the different aspects. It's more like that.
Yeah, and then I want to do like an underworld one with the roots. Won't that be cool? Yeah.
Yes. Mhm.
I mean, that's the actual profession of everyone here is an artist. It's just not,
Mhm.
I don't know what we think. It's literally everything that we're doing is a creation, is a presentation. Variety of colors of emotion, and the more emotion you put into what you're doing, or richness in that sense, it doesn't have to be emotion in the sense of happy or sadness or this polarized version of it, but the more presence of self that is there, the more entertaining, invigorating, stimulating, healing, informing, because the real art is not, it's one genre or it's one other, you listen to it, it's everything. It carries everything, just like good art does to a person. Like, this isn't, one thing or the other, it's everything's multidimensional. And, the more presence is there, the more that is transferred then to the other. And, it all makes sense. It all adds up. The progenitor, the original artist, did that so well that we're here now.
Yeah.
We're just carrying that on. We're just, just having the same experience of the extension of that. It's like trees growing or nature or something like that.
Yeah, like my trees.
I just realized we were recording, and I told you guys that I was in bed. I can't believe I did that.
My trees.
Maybe I'll cut that out, Sandra.
What's that?
I'll cut that out if you would like me to.
You should cut it out and leave a circle where the cat's face was.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, we're recording. I didn't even know we were recording. I thought we were just chatting.
Oh, we just said it was just so much good stuff coming out that we needed to record, and we were right, because what Oz ran before you got back here, Trudy, was awesome.
Which was
and then I killed it.
Which was completely inspired or formed around Felicia's expression.
No,
it's like if she's had the same experiences, she says the same things that we went through, like time to get. So
yeah, what she did,
like
she explained that three, we talk about, I think the key here, what we are hitting on why I like that, that rant, is because we were talking about the three most difficult things to explain. And yet, what I heard from Felicia's perspective, what then you went on your rant, Og, and give me your perspective on that. In that, we defined the blueprint.
Cool.
Because we voiced it to where, because you right now give that mental construct, cleared it out. And that's just, you keep putting, this is why we keep voicing this frequency. So then the collective then has that frequency right here. This is why we put this out to other people. Because in it, we just talked about as what are the things that are hard to express. And then in that same way, you expressed it, and it was really simple and beautiful. And I think we all understood it. Right?
I think Felicia has some spring-loaded expressions. I'm going to let you talk. But the three things were that death has already occurred. That's where we got here. Any answer is correct because everything is happening. It's all happening at once. You could just say whatever you want and you'd be correct. It's just what it results in, what is eternal, which is only those centralized around the self. And then that after that's all said and done, after everything is said and done, at every time that everything is said and done, your soul is still off on vacation somewhere having more experiences behind your back that you're not going to be able to, consciously see.
Yes, because your soul factors in the desire for experience and exploring only. That's the only, if you are to say, factor in, a human being factors conditions, time, space. Everything has to be like planned out, and the soul is so bored with that. I mean, it can hardly stand it. So actually, in that kind of a structure, rigid structure, you're kind of a bit of a soulless being, because it's never going to join you in there. That's why I kept emphasizing that you're in a realm of the dead, with the persona, because your soul is not joining a program. It cannot recognize it. It doesn't read it. It's out of, if it's not a living frequency, it cannot read it. So you're in this substructure realities that are, for example, okay, I'm gonna go to simple because, oh my goodness, wow, how did it get so? This is, I have to go back.
No, we're getting deep. Go with it, please.
Cool, yeah. But okay, so going back to, for example, the soul is really interesting in savoring the here and now. It doesn't even, it's so in the here and now, and then because it explores the depthness, the layers, the multi-dimensional layers, and it goes deeper and deeper, and the deeper it goes, it's like a rippling of a stone, you know, when you throw in water. It just never ends, you know. It just keeps the depthness of it and the reverberation and creating more and more and more realities, because it breaks through by being in a here and now. For example, let's say, just let's bring it back to simplicity. For example, somebody that just enjoys an apple for the time being, yeah? But it enjoys it so much, it's not just like eating an apple just because it's good for you or because you need it. It's when they are eating an apple, like to us, my grandparents, they actually taught me reverse engineering through eating an apple. And this is what they said to me. They said, when you eat an apple in this here and now, your apple is on a plate. Somebody made that plate, yeah? They made that plate through their own creation. How did that plate arrive on your table? Who made the table? Who was the co-creator to your own reality? So they kept introducing the kind of behind the scene on how that apple arrived on my table. And not only that, but like the apple, you went to for example, us in a city, you went to the store to pick up the apple. To pick up the apples, there was another living being there, like the cashier, that touched that apple. You went and picked it up. There was the grocer that arranged the apple. Again, living being touching this apple. The apple was taken to the store by the driver of the truck to deliver the apple to the store. That's another living being in love for his or her own family, driving the truck in order, through love, in order for the family that he has at home. And then you think about the farm, how the apples were harvested, those living beings that touched the apple, then how the apple grows in the tree, how somebody planted and tended that tree, how the tree is rooted in Gaia, in earth, and is connected to the sun. And he would go on and on and on. And then my grandpapa would say, now taste this apple. And talk about the taste of the apple. Now you taste this apple. Yeah. And now you know what an apple really, really means. And what he was saying to me, he was saying, in that awareness, a soul gains so-called so many years of what humanity calls history. Yeah, by you gain so much awareness in all universe, that in one universe like that, that you could be done with that universe and get going, you know, to something else, instead of lingering around, you know, and barely cutting your apple with a knife and eating it in a hurry, you know. It's a huge difference in your perception, and in the gaining, the soul keeps gaining more and more joy, absorbing and savoring more and more joy just by eating an apple.
Yeah, you know.
Of what an apple actually is, and it's the experience.
That's what it's an experience. That apple is not an apple, it's an experience. And everything else is like that. You think it's an apple, you think it's a city, you think it's a refrigerator, you think it's a car. It's the experience of it.
Everything in life is the apple. Somebody told me that as well from earlier on, so that was like, I've had time to think about it. And
There's the pole of connection to the stick with all the words and everything. So there are infinite numbers of connections to the stick, the apple being one, the car being another, and so forth. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And you see, those basically, they're not separate layers. They connect, and this is an exercise in transcending duality, because each circle, you know, is actually, the way we perceive it, not complete, but a segment. It has beginning and end, a day and a night, and everything's like broken in half. And then there's a response curve and a substance curvature of light and dark, or hot and cold, or, you know, what we like and don't like. And it seems that way to us. When if you see with your mind and not your senses, and eventually, you know, if you feel, you just go right to it. There's actually no, you know, difference between what is, what we perceive. Basically, what is and what isn't two different things. There's only one thing in all of creation, which is more or less experience. And there's either more experience and substance to an experience, or there's the lack of that presence and that substance and that richness. And so the idea is, what we perceive as separate is actually a complete circle, and what is a higher and a lower, or a hot and a cold, or right and left, is actually two ends that are connected together, and they're kind of like two arrow points that are pointing in different directions, to the point where there's nothing beyond them, but they're back to back, they're separate, they're perceived separately consciously, but in actuality they're unified, they're one thing, they're one experience. If you go physically, it seems like there's opposites there, but if you look at the whole thing, it's actually just one thing that's kind of wrapped around itself, and it meets up in the middle. And only when we see one side as one side and the other side as the opposite of that do we get this perception of duality, which is actually the whole mind of a being. The soul is split into higher and lower realms in a physical world and underworld, and that's where we get the whole, this world. Every reaction and cause and experience has an equal to opposite one. The only way we experience this one is if there's another one, and if they're separated, and we're not aware of both of them at the same time. That's really what's happening here. But the idea is, not only, and that actually means each moment is one of those things broken. You know, it's broken in the duality thing. But the idea, I kind of gave it away there, is that it's all one experience. It's all one complete circle. And they're not layers that are separate. They're spirals of different layers that are connected in a continuous pattern. And that was something in a talk long ago about how to convert the image of duality into what is actually there when you transcend the poles of the opposites. And it's not by picking a side, by going to the middle, where if it's 50-50 one or the other, it's neither. It's actually not neither. It's technically both. It's 100% both. And at that point, you get both worlds, and you literally expand in being to both sides. And you say, I could go this way, and it's that way, and I have this response of the being of me that sees it just this way and revels in that and has that experience. Or I could also go the other way, and technically, I'm both. And by not choosing one or the other, you're actually encompassing both in experience, because you're seeing both sides of it, and you're realizing that both, in that sense, are actually simultaneously occurring opposites or projections of a central, an all-encompassing central, and that neutral point in the middle path, is what's actually occurring. It's the only part of it that's actually there, which correlates and gives a channel or a lean into that central point, where when one sees in the center, they're moving up the spine of the occurrence of consciousness and time. And this relates to some pattern that one achieves. It's a sacred pattern, which begins to, it moves your awareness into the center. It has to do with DNA, and it's all metaphors and the map and the same thing, but the virtual version, because ultimately you access ancestral memory, where you access beyond the limitations of the physical self, basically this life or incarnation, which, you know, it's not incarnation and reincarnation is happening at once. It just means the spiral is spiraled around other spirals, and they're all happening now. But the only way to get to that information, that center, for both sides of the story, is to get from the outside, or the pendulum swinging back and forth, and to find the neutral point, which all you do is choose that. Well, conceptually, the neutral point is just being neutral. And then you do that, you match to that. You don't actually have to go anywhere and do anything. And then eventually what happens is, it's hard, I really don't know how to describe it, but something happens to your cells and to your consciousness and your DNA, and more light energy transfers through, maybe because if it's like a pendulum, if it's like something in the projection system, or you're projecting reality based upon what you focus on. If you focus on one side here, that means the other side of reality is doing the mirror verse, if you will, is focused on the other side, and it's always going to be flip-flop like that. If you don't focus on either side, you're technically focused on both at that point, even if it's subtle, so you're not really seeing both of them at once. Eventually, though, people in reality and the media and all this stuff will begin to not make sense, because it will seem like just apparent and applicable to one or the other, when you're beginning to be in both, or in that sense, not be within those bounds. And in that sense, the middle path is actually simultaneously what is really occurring, what is a true reality, if you will, the actual perspective, if you were in the seat of yourself and not, out there, and as well, the only one where energy is actually preserved and cultivated, basically the position where energy is flowing forth from, instead of the outer edge, where it's seemingly, there's never enough, more or less, because if we stay on that pendulum throughout life, it makes us tired. Being in a certain situation, like kind of what happened earlier today, if we stay in the pendulum, or if we are in the experience of those who basically experienced by those rules, and it becomes a part of our experience, it's basically the death of the soul. It's tiring, it's annoying, it drains energy. And technically the like higher dimensional science is that if that occurs and our energy goes out, energy isn't just like, oh, someone off, it's like smoke, it just goes somewhere. There's there's an unlimited amount when we cultivate it, but every single amount is recorded. And it means that whoever pissed us off or something like that has that energy and is walking around with that energy on their back now, proud that they did that. And so the only way is to not swing. I think everybody kind of mentioned that earlier, that's the way to retain, to not be reactive. And in essence, the mind and this world more or less does that and pulls our energy. And in that sense, when we reserve it or preserve, conserve it, something happens where it's like in a flower blooming or something, and there's this bringing forth of awareness that either can't be signaled and activated, or has no purity or room in the vessel to come forth, or is basically not being attracted because we're holding a polarized space, which this energy is non-polarized, it's non-dual, it doesn't pick sides. And so we have to be non-dual, non-polarized, neutral for it to then resonate through the body, because we are that energy. But a bit of us that's in the body isn't fully realizing that. It's simultaneously writing us a note and saying, stay back, stay over there, don't wake me up tomorrow, don't come home to this vessel, stay away. And the last thing, I'm going to say here, without getting too expansive, and when I talk about the more things like this, it's like my radar of how much sense I'm making, just like everybody else, I think, starts to dwindle down, it fades away. I can't tell how it's being absorbed.
No, you're doing great,
Aug. You're making so much sense.
The idea is that what is being done with the blueprint, the soul, all that, it's the same concept as planting a seed, giving it the nourishment, the circumstance, or the context, or the environment that is required, and then giving it light and allowing it to flourish. It's the same exact concept and the same exact process, and or crystallization or something like that. Or it's not crystallization because it's a liquid there. And yeah, I don't know where I was truly going with that, but it's related to those spirals because we're not in a straight line and we're not in a segment which is mirrored of like one against another. It's a continuous harmony and a balance that goes from layer to layer, layer to layer, and that goes in. But there is an end as far as the layers, or not the layers, but the primary truths, basically. But they're mixed up in whatever we want to experience. There's no end of that.
So actually, Reggie's little thing that he did in ESG with his spiral thing with the pole, Felicia, remember we were laughing at Reggie's thing? That's actually real.
Yeah, I know he ran himself to the grinder. I asked him, I said, please don't do that because in the next 3 days, you're really gonna run yourself to the grinder. And he said, I know what you mean, you know, he wrote back. Because he was so excited about like.
But he was seeing what Og was seeing, the spiral of it all, you know, like the continuousness. He was seeing it in another way, you know?
Well, yes, the spy, but they if you do it the way he did it, is they're not layering it.
Right.
And so now you get all jumbled up for the time being, you know.
But he was actually seeing that the way Og was seeing it, and he, you know, in his own expression, which is so cool.
Okay, I'll leave that there.
No, I know what you mean, though. You have to layer it because it's all the things and it's happening all at once.
You have to layer it, and then you can, once you understand that, then you can spiral it whatever you need to spiral it in each and every way, you know. You can just go ahead and, you know, be creative, but your initial one, it's that, because that one comes from the living library, you know, that exercise, and I'm sure it's done for a reason that way, so you don't jumble your psychic for the time being. It's but anyhow,
he's just working from the reverseness up to it, though. Then he'll make the other one.
He's his own creator being. He can create his reality any way he wants to, as long as he's enjoying it. Hey, that's the most important thing. But he did say he got a bit jumbled up, you know. So,
yeah, totally.
Going back to what Og was saying on how the soul can, and how the soul can project aspects of its being in many planes of existence, you know, in many other planets, in many other universes, in many other states of consciousness, because there is a lot. It's unlimited. How you can be, you know, a little ball of fire rolling out through the hills of Venus, for what I know, and have a lot of fun. Yeah? And then that's your universe right there. And you can stay there for a long time as
like
that.
The sun.
Yeah. Yeah. You can choose to stay there for what it seemed to another human being is eternity, because what does eternity feels like when you really enjoy something, yeah? It feels like it's a long time has gone by, like, yeah? Long time, because you're enjoying it.
Or no time.
Or no time. You can go either way, either there is no time, or it seems like you have savoring it so much by being the ball of fire on Venus for like 10,000 years. and nobody can move you because you're in such joy of being, just being that, and not taking into account who Venus is, where is Venus located, how many visitors does it have, it's like, that's irrelevant to you. Yeah? What is the history of Venus? When humanity is gonna get to Venus? Did they ever get to Venus? None like that. The soul does not factor this in. Just like a bird, a bird, when you look at a bird, it's just being a bird. It doesn't say, oh, I wonder what the yellow bird is doing. Does she have any more feathers than I do? Is it okay to be a blue bird? Do I have to be a yellow bird? Am I sitting on a higher branch? Am I sitting on a higher branch? I'm on a higher level of consciousness than my tree. Am I down at the bottom?
I had a really weird thing happen to me. I've been having them happen for probably about a year, but last night, you guys, just before, probably who knows, before I awoke from my sleep, I was in another state, and I remember being totally conscious and being able to interact, smell, taste, everything. And I actually experienced thinking, wow, I'm not dreaming. And I remember dreaming this way, and really, wow. So I had like a dream within a dream. And then it was just so bizarre because it had to do with my ex-husbands. And I was actually with my first ex-husband. and I'm thinking, why did I, really? I went back to my first ex-husband, and oh frick, I guess I'm with my ex-husband, and I'm, and I've had this dream for the last year, and it's not a dream, you guys. I'm totally, it's so frickin' real. And I'm doing things everyday stuff, and I'm and then I'm looking at myself and thinking, wow, I'm really with him. How could I ever do this to Darcy? Why am I with him? And then I'd be have the dream within the dream. Really, I really had this isn't a dream, kind of thing. It's hard to explain.
Is it ever since you made that circle with the whatchamacallit?
No, but this one last night that I had was a dream within the dream. Yes, within the circle.
So you've had these dreams since you did the exercise?
No, I've had them for probably at least a year, with different scenarios in my life that I've been going into other places and really having another life. It's so bizarre.
Well, that's how things are. You just went there.
Yeah, I wanted Og to kind of help me out with this. Did I act okay? So when a person dies, do you just go automatically to one of those lives?
Alicia, or
I want some answers. Does anybody really know? This was, you guys, this was so, honestly, last night, I really honestly thought. And then I woke up and I'm oh, Darcy's not there, because he's not here. He's in his hunting camp in Alberta right now. And there's nobody here. I get so freaked out because I never know what ex-husband I'm going to wake up with.
Well, yeah,
and I've been married 3 times.
We have to get
not funny, I guess.
And I wake up alone when nobody's here. Okay, I'm here. No, this is, you guys, this is totally real. And I, how can you explain this? I'm living in all these different worlds.
Yes, that is the beginning of simultaneity of being. because we pop in and out in universes, not in just our parallel lives here, but we pop out like I pop out in Sirius B and figure out what is going on over there, you know? So don't let it.
But I can control it. I can control it. I go, and I've been doing this for about a year. Yes. And I can actually, before I go to bed, have an intention, okay, well, I'm going to go to my other place. Like just in the last few months, I've been able to control it. But I've been doing this for about a year, and it was freaking me out. And now it's like, oh, I think I'm going to visit this space.
So is this a confession you're not really telling Darcy?
Well, he never watches the videos, but no, I don't. It's like I feel totally guilty. Like I go there. I don't.
That's what it is.
Like feeling bad.
We pop in and out of many realities at any given moment. You're just getting to be aware of them. We go all over the place, to other universes, to ex-husbands, to mothers, to fathers, to old self, new self, future self.
I have great visits with my mom. My mom died. My mom died.
Well, you'll be with your mom and you'll be with your dad. It's just that it's not gonna send you to another universe, you or inner being, because it'll freak you out too much. So it'll send you to your to the next past that was close to you and to your heart, and it was significant for you in many ways, because it won't send you in parallel realities that are not of significance to you. And then the perception of your soul is very different than the personality. It doesn't perceive it with like, why you got a divorce and, why you feel.
I actually created one. I created one that's a mixture of all the men I've been with.
Oh, yeah,
And I go there.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
You have some secrets.
That's the best one.
Yeah.
I need to have a session with you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have to
Just
hear
kidding.
all the juicy story that goes.
No, they actually look like they look like the whole, like all the good things in every one of them is that one. I'll call it my little bubble world that I go to, and it is a bubble. It is a bubble world. It's like you go to it, and it's wow.
Yeah, because the soul in pure essence of being, it takes all the aspects of all the good, bad husbands, and it puts it in one, and then that is a true experience of a soul. The other one is in separation. Yeah, but that one is.
So I hope when I pass on that I go there.
Yeah, that's a true meaning of a husband.
So I'm creating this.
Yeah,
reality.
or a wife, or a friend of a mother. A lot of people say mother archetype. I never got to experience. I had a mother, but I never felt really motherhood. So then the soul goes to timelines of many mothers that you experience and integrates all that separate the perspective of separation into one, and then you truly understand what motherhood is.
Yes.
That's pure essence.
Yeah.
And then it goes wider, like Og says. Excuse me.
Trudy created a new place where you wanted to.
I did, but I'm feeling like, oh no, am I creating something? Like I'm like battling within myself as I'm creating this, and I'm thinking, is this not something I should be doing? Should I be just anchoring to organic, like earth, and just being here? And no, don't go there. I'm going to be astrally sucked out. And
no.
Well,
You cannot be astrally sucked out.
So this is something I've been doing for like a year.
Yeah. And more of it.
And you know what? I'm actually dressed in very, very flowing, beautiful dresses, like almost medieval, but very whimsical, fairy-like. That's the way I choose. And he's like very knighted, like very masculine, and you know, and we sit on the grass and we drink wine and he feeds me grapes and
Okay, Trudy, that's beautiful.
Yeah, we make love, you know, amazing love. And it's so real, you guys. Like, I'm saying it.
Is it one man? Is it one man with the characteristics of all these husbands, or
and more?
That's
Yeah,
how
it is.
the
It's
soul
every
experience is.
I just watch Outlander.
You guys, I'm still recording this. Hello.
I know. I can only create from my experience, right? I can only create from my direct experience. So it's a whole merging. It's a wholeness of being that I'm creating this little world, and I'm loving it.
Awesome.
That's awesome. But I felt what you're experiencing, but when I watched Outlander as I was healing my broken leg.
I haven't even watched. I saw like maybe one episode of Outlander a couple of years ago.
It's incredible.
Oh wow, I'm gonna have to watch it.
Because it goes through the different times. This woman lives in 2 different times.
Wow.
Apart.
Wow.
Oh yeah. It's so it'll demonstrate what you're just discussing.
Wow.
In a sense.
Well, I don't want anything meddling with what I'm creating.
Oh.
Yeah, probably your own show is better than anything else because it's real and it's yours, you know.
And I have that ability to just visualize things, you know, and then I make them happen.
That's the beginning of simultaneity of being right there.
I think it has to do with the vibrational energy of that we have. A few years ago, I was at an event and I was with a friend, and talking about simultaneity of being. I was extremely into that, very happy. I couldn't contain myself. I could almost I felt like, oh my goodness, I'm not going to be able to step on. I'm going to pretty much flow. I was at that level. So something really curious happened, and I actually spoke with a few people about this, and I think it has to do with our vibrational energy. What happened was it was a lineup waiting for us to get into that concert hall. So what happened was I was talking to the people in front of us with my friend, and at some point there were a family of 3 people. So somebody said, one of them said, oh, that's so nice that blah, 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 what you said about blah, blah, blah. So I was like, I looked at her and I couldn't remember anything. And I said that, yeah, you just said it a few minutes ago, like 10 minutes ago. And I said, but we just start talking. No, we've been chatting for like 20 minutes, we've been waiting. Then I said, that's not possible. So what happened was I forgot actually the tickets in the room. And that was very close by. So I went for 10 minutes in the room and brought the tickets. My friend was the witness of that. I returned, so it was not possible at all to be present and chat for all that time. And as a matter of fact, I saw those people for the first time. So my friend freaked out totally and said, so I was like totally looking there. I said, so what else did I say? Well, you're talking about this and blah, blah, blah. And it looked like me, like it was something that I was like, yeah, it could be me. And I said, so what, I was here behind you? Yes. So how did I approach you? So I realized, oh my goodness, actually in those 15, 20 minutes, and I know I barely made it with the tickets back because I was afraid, I wasn't able to enter there. And those 15 minutes, I experienced somehow both worlds at the same time. So something has to do, because I know I was probably almost high or something. I was really, really, really buzzing. And that, in my view, has to do with what took place. So I think, you know, talking about the simultaneity of being, we can be present in even bilocating ourselves in that way.
Wow, now I'm gonna be not scared of it anymore, because the way I got out of it is I just centered myself in the pole, and then I woke up.
It's interesting.
So that's maybe jumping timelines.
Yep.
Wow. So I've learned how to work that Merkaba field.
If you want to call it that, that's, more oriented towards a certain school of thought. You just probably naturally, for some reason or motivation, just naturally had the experience, because naturally we're all spontaneously doing it at all times. It's just that not everyone in this day and age has the aware experience, the conscious experience and memory of that happening. Because the point is, you didn't do that. The non-physical you that is present in all the varieties of states that we've been describing in these ways that don't really match up to anything physical, because it's just beyond everything. That's the you that did that, and that's not the body. It's what's in the body right now, seeing through the body. And
Wow.
So it's not everybody has the conscious memory of that transfer through. So for whatever reason for you, usually it's because of a type of emotionality, but again, not emotionality, but just the presence of self through either intense suffering that brings that into being because it has to be, or a joy or a natural, intensity of that, or a desire for something more, which is, where these things happen naturally, because nobody really, it's like the daydream that occurs when the teacher's kind of just droning on, and you don't mean to fall asleep, but soon you find yourself in another world walking, along something, and somebody bumps you and you pop out of that world and you slipped into it. And so when there's the right conditions, when a person knows about it and seeks that, they get it, or when there's just the right conditions, you accidentally slip into different worlds and you come back with memories of it, and you see the beginnings of that spiral, or this these orbs with curtains and veils coming down, where we're basically in these different realms of experiences, and they're centered around an immaterial eternal self, but no one is the full picture. And so usually we have when leaving various forms, whatever you want to call it, we pass through an intermediary state where we have a nexus that we can go into anywhere else, and then how much we know and how much the conscious version of ourselves has spent the time here generating a reflection in higher space that corresponds to what we want, kind of determines what happens. That's why people who are not aware of their aspect as a creator, their role, or being tricked into creating through the beliefs and energy given to these ideas, some reflection that they really don't agree with, has nothing to do with them. That's where the idea of the afterlife and heaven or hell more so and all that stuff is. It's something you have to create, and the first people who created it did it because other people created a schematic idea, a false blueprint of getting everyone to create that. So it's it doesn't actually exist, but because people created it, they have the experience of it, which is, when you don't have the experience of what's actually happening, is it seems like what's actually occurring and existing. But in the essence, number 3 is really primal here, because it's whatever, everything happens, whatever you want. And I didn't really, that wasn't to the, I can give an actual feel on the process, but I don't know, we'll maybe save that for another time or something, unless anybody wants it, or somebody wants it directly and up front. But because that was just about, a concept of which you said you had the experience of basically going through a time slip or something like that. Because in terms of death and the transition and how all that works, basically everything, but as well there's literally a format that we go through. I'll just, and if somebody wants it, you can ask, but the one sentence understanding, which forms the beginnings of the idea is that you're in a plethora of timelines, and where the physical end occurs for one system, the awareness of the being pops into the other system.
Wow.
The awareness isn't, or the consciousness isn't developed to have intimacy with the immaterial self of the awareness. Then that consciousness, the memories, stay with the original place that you leave, and just the awareness, the feeling of who you are goes to the other one. If you have the original groups taught people how to merge the soul awareness with the consciousness and jump from timeline to timeline and never die and never experience dying or not existing, and to tap into, and once that happens, it's a wave that goes, and then you hit a fulcrum, a singularity, a crash, a fizzing, whatever it is, and all of a sudden you remember you've never died. You've been here forever. You've been flying around, flopping timeline to timeline, playing colored electric marbles in time space for all eternity, and that's all you've ever done, because that's all anyone ever does. And people just are in this game here where they go through a certain sheet that somebody developed, and it wipes their memory, and they forget about it. They didn't die. Nothing ever ends. They're in dum-dum land now, and it's because they're listening to the dum-dum people. But again, the dum-dum people that create the system, they can only create it because they know that's not real. So it's like you can never actually get away from knowing it. Somebody's bound to know it at all times in all realms. There's no place where it's not known. It's the source of everything, the fact that nothing ever ends, and there's no death.
So there's one way that I actually have taught myself in the last year to remember where I'm going when I'm sleeping, when I wake up. I have a glass of water by the bed, and it's kind of just a thing that I do. I take a sip of water with the intention that in the morning, when I take a sip of water, when I wake up, I'm going to remember everything.
That's great.
And so that's my intention every night before I go to bed. So, and I always remember all my dreams, and some of them aren't dreams. Like they're not. Sometimes if I go to bed with a busy head, yeah, that's just all, subconscious like stuff working out. But the stuff that's really real is the stuff that happens just before I wake up. That's when I go into like another state, like.
Yeah.
Sometimes better than my own life.
The early morning is where time is actually condensed and springing forth from.
Yes.
Here, which material manifested into this realm to say she has something to say, but that is called the anchoring. All you're doing is putting a conscious anchor so that consciousness can pick up where it left off. You can do that at any point with anything at any time and build a database of 5-story building of anchors so that everything is kept. And energetically, if it's done with enough intent, as well as not, overloading, you can literally do exactly what I described and have this database of energy in your mind, if you will, your awareness field. And I don't know how to describe it, but the closest thing we have in this reality, other than this reality itself, is certain buildings are basically superconductive, supercomputer systems that are capable of operating within here and the nexus to the point where they're in all the pledoras of planes of Earth. And you can't get all of them, but they boast, we have 10,000 places that we're tethered to, and that, agency or corporation or military group, whatever it is, their operatives can go to that building, go through a little gateway, kind of like a metal detector or a certain room or something, and leave that building at any timeline that is, there's a task or an operation or something like that, because that building is present in all of them. It's not literally one building and then in the other timeline, this is a Chase, Manhattan, Banks, in another timeline, that building is not even there. It's anchored through all of them. But through technology and organizing the field that happens, you can do that with your mind, and it's really your self-awareness, because the consciousness, the body, it doesn't go anywhere. You can't leave this place. But luckily, you're not the body, so you have liberation to do whatever you want as soon as you realize that. And you go anywhere. You can literally go anywhere. If you had a magazine of a place with purple, flowers and trees that, you know, grew boomerangs and popcorn, you know, fairs or something, you can conceive that in your mind, and any aspect of that brochure exists in relativity, not literally like, you know, some weird, you know, nonsensical place, although the experience of that could exist, it just wouldn't be relative to that central core where we have this type of organic expanse where everything kind of ties into a central reasoning of what we call physics. But anything within those physics that you can conceive actually exists. If it's not like, you know, dragonfly lily pads that, you know, launch you into the clouds when you jump on them or something like that, like cartoonish, technically you're going to have a dream like that. But if it's something relative in physics that could have happened from the beginning of what we call Earth, that actually exists, and there's a you that exists there. And you can access that you if you charge yourself the right way and basically synchronize your awareness with that version of you. So doing that, putting anchors, all there's methods for all of this, locates you. They did it with technology to the point where they can take a building or a craft or whatever it is, and it goes nowhere. It doesn't get up, it doesn't fly. The craft UFO, they don't go nowhere. They bend the fields to move through space, but when they go to another location in time, space, or anything like that, and technically when they're moving, and we perceive them, they're not actually moving, they're bending space, and space is moving through it or around it. But when they travel through hyperspace to another, whatever you want to call it, they're changing perspective and moving out of phase from our perspective and moving into phase of the field of perspective that all those beings in that timeline and that version of us and Earth are creating. And they're jumping like they're lily pad hopping off of our perspectives between different dimensions and realities. So again, our body doesn't do that. Body stays here. No such thing as all that stuff. But the awareness does.
Yeah.
The body stays in what state?
Here. If you you came from somewhere else, that body's still there. If there's enough awareness there, this is what I touched on and was touched on, Felicia touched on it, that we're not in this state. Something that happens that I was saying with the shift and all that, more energy flows through DNA. Something has to happen and more energy ends up flowing through and everything kind of changes. That field where the semblance point of the heart and all that, it basically one is man and spirit, or excuse me, lady and spirit, and they're either primarily one or the other in the realm of polarity. When they're perfectly balanced, 50-50, which one are you? Eternal spirit or a limited body? Well, if you're technically in perfect harmony, you're neither one or the other, but both simultaneously, meaning both shares the world of both shares the benefits, the perks of being both. You can be sensual and you know, focused in one plane, and you can also be eternal and unlimited and never suffer. So the idea is that when that occurs, there's some type of transference, and only after a certain point of that occurring and basically being like, it's like some divine marriage, like an intimacy that we get comfortable with the true spiritual version of things. You can literally view yourself in both worlds. You don't have to go to sleep and you wake up, or you get the memories and the dreams of like this deja vu. You can simultaneously be in one world and be like, hold on, and go to the other world, or be doing them at the same time. The way we are, the brain can't do it at both. It literally like overheats and people like going to seizures and things. It doesn't work. But when we get used to it, when certain things happen, it somehow it bilocates simultaneous streams, and then from there it continues. And the end of that, or the end with the next phase, is like people walking around that have the cosmic database of knowledge instead of just like what happened on TV last night or what's just happening in this history. And the idea is, if you just imagine and think what could happen, what could have happened, what are the possibilities, you're already beginning to do it. Once our imagination is stronger than our logical mind telling us what to think and what to feel and how to be, we actually experience it, because those other worlds, they exist. Those other possibilities, they're real. They're just as real as the one we're experiencing now. We're just purposely, more or less, separating or separated from that. And it's really the polarity. It's not fear or it's not any single thing. It's the fact that we're not in the center of neutrality and observation and picking any one or the other, whether it's because we think that's cool and good and we like it that way, or because we're afraid of one and we hate it and we're repelling. Any attraction or repelling forces it into one singular version, which is chopping it out of an infinite plethora, and it limits our being to that mirror version. And then we're stuck in this cycle of having the now and then the infinite reflection of the now, and having to go through step after step when they're actually all happening right now. And again, we can only have that when we're cutting ourselves off from the infinite version, and as well, when we're doing that, we're only creating a reflection which isn't reflecting the whole. So it's like, it's
Odd, you said that reflection thing. So when I'm in that other world, my wedding rings are on my right hand. It's the mirror reflection. It's so I know when I'm in that state and I'm like, okay, checking for okay, and I'm like really convinced, and then I remind myself to look at my hands, and then that also brings me out of, oh, you're in that other state, because my rings will be on my, it'll be like I will be my own mirror.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's so freaking it's so real, and it's so, yeah, you just have to experience it, you guys. Like it's like, I wish, like, you know, like I have been able to dream like this for as long as I can remember. When I put it all together, I've been doing this as a child.
That's how we dreamed Gaia into being before it even became a planet. All of us here.
The true childhood.
Talking to each other.
The
Yes.
true childhood was thousands of years ago.
Thousands
It wasn't
of
a few
years.
years ago, wasn't it? And it was like a heaven place or something, you know, something close to that. It has nothing to do with what's going on now.
No, not at all. Not at all. I would go as far as to say it really doesn't, because every here and now got nothing to do with any other here and now.
That's the point. Yeah.
And just because, let's say, you can be gone from this plane of existence, so-called 3 years in Earth timeline, and your body, the projection of your body and what you show up here as a human being will continue going on, and you can come into your awareness right where you left it, or you can go into the past and present future of it. It just depends what your entrance point is, like Og explained about the hologram. When you're out of the hologram and you have an end where all the spinning goes around, you can enter through any junction point of every multiple realities where they meet, and they find that nodal point of what? Of focus.
I went into a state where I was actually coming back from the grave, and everybody around me was like, Trudy, what's going on? You know, like they were shocked because I was back, because I had died in that bubble world that I was going to. It was just really freaky, and I got out of it pretty quickly because I was kind of like uncomfortable, but I had gone back to one of my things where I had actually died in or something. Yeah, it was just like a brief little awareness of it.
What you're saying, right? It's that we already died, and that's the realization. So we're never died.
Wow. You guys,
I've been near death, literally been dead many times, and I like have to tell people now, remember I told you so. There is no death. We don't die.
It's only the thought of it is whatever you believe is what you create. So you can create something as convincing as that, but again, it's temporary if it's not focused on the reality of the self and knowledge, which there's only self-knowledge, and the reality of the self is not limited but eternal. So that's a temporary. It would be like a daydream, which is crazy because it means, you know, everything's reversed. But I posted a couple of NEDs or NDEs by a couple different people, and they talked about some of these concepts, and a lot of NDEs. There's a lot of, you just got to go through experiences that people have to realize like they're painting some type of elaborate system. But what Felicia said, that you could say anything you remember any preconception, any now, well, first it's any other is completely different, not like the other. They're not disjointed, but because you are what's similar between them, you know, there's a bridge between them, and it's your awareness. It's why it's there. Some larger, you know, platform for learning that boggles, you know, our mind if we try to attempt it here. And it's actually just because it's feeling. It's because it's, you know, we are here to give feeling to others who don't have it because they forgot it or something like that. And that's what needs to be. There's no information. They need a secret passcode. There's no like great message that's just according to something they must. It's just feeling. They're bored and tired of not feeling because they've forgotten, and so feeling wakes them back up. That's how it works. But in the same sense, it's because there's so many. That means that any point in the line or the so many, it's like a circle. Any point is infinitely farther from every other point. Meaning you can zoom in and make that distance grow. You know, any distance, or you can zoom out and make them scrunch together until they're exactly the same perceptually. But so in that sense, it means that no. So basically, that no reality is the complete reality or the true reality, in the sense that anything you can think of, it's, if you can think of it and you see it as something that was here or something like that, it's actually what they call a backdated memory, meaning this realm that we're in now programs that in. And if you actually turn back the page from outside this dimension, we could have literally been in the lily pad, you know, dragonfly reality, and we wouldn't even know it, because the laws of the universe could have been different, physics and everything could have been different. And we literally only have the memory of the universe that we go into, and at all times we're hopping universes, let alone just personal realities that we're changing. But the second part of that is that it's still in effect. So this conversation right here, not actually happening. There's a stream of plethora of possibilities, and the one that we see that is just the one that is occurring, that's not the one that's occurring, because they're all occurring. So that's the second part of it, that right now isn't the real reality, and we're in a dream. We're in our subconscious, or a larger being's subconscious. Second thing I want to say, I think Felicia outlined that like a well of inspiration. You know, I've had experiences, so it's like they're just like rising, bubbling up, and then I have these like technical views that I kind of want to explain, but this is what they learned for thousands of years. And a lot of, you know, a-holes use this to protect themselves, because ultimately they're afraid of what people will think of them because of how their desires overcame them. And as well, though, it's their fault, but it's not their fault in the sense that they're the ones to blame for all of our suffering. It's that, and in the other sense, they're not to be like kicked out of reality. It's the fact that if you kick them out and the frequency attraction for that in this place isn't healed, well, you're going to invite in Bowser or, you know, Freddy Krueger. He's up next. So keep the devil you know rather than the one you don't know. That's like the saying, which, you know, it applies, because as soon as that guy's gone, there's a vacuum, and the next cosmic gangster is going to show right up, and he's been waiting a long time. So that's also what we're leading up to, and we're all going to punch him and kick him and step on his head. Not literally, though, but proverbially, because he's not, whatever that person tries or that being tries is not going to work, because we've been leading up to preparation so that there's a core group that is going to be unstoppable energetically. And while the whole world puts their hands up and screams, that core group is just going to be sitting there saying, you know, calm down, you don't have to do that. Where that's never occurred in the history of any of these awakenings, where everybody usually does know what to do. And that's all that has to happen in these groups and these projects and these whatever. When these beings appear or something, there's some guy that's just like, it's not real, he's making it up, it's a hologram, you know, don't believe it. It crushes the whole thing. Even the monster is like, shut up, it's working. And as soon as that happens, it reverses everything. Everybody giggles at him. It doesn't make sense. He's no longer scary. He's a clown. He looks like a clown. Anyway, but that's happening in the world. It takes the devil, makes him, you put a, you know, rubber nose on his face, and it's like no longer the devil, basically, or he's just a little kid throwing a tantrum. But the idea is, if we are not here, but here, or in these jumps, and we're bound to hit another jump at some point, it's just what happens here. We usually, you know, halfway, we don't live lives. There's never been a life lived. Apparently there is one being, a Christed being, and there's actually a group of beings from a pure bloodline that lived the entire time in one life without jumping, and in that sense, in every other reality that is jumped, that being never left the reality, and that's the only kind of being that anywhere you go to in any reality, he's always there, or she. There's actually supposed to be women, that everything's reversed, and it's a guy that looks like this, and this happened to him. It's really a lady that did this, and this was what she did. And but so we're kind of like half daydreaming in one, another one we're really there, the other ones we don't even know what's going on. Those beings, basically the original Christ ladies, if you will, the representatives of the Sophia intelligence, the pure essence, and it's intelligence, but it's because it's wisdom, and wisdom is intelligence mixed with emotion. They actually never die, never have died, even though they birthed themselves into the world of life and death. Which doesn't make sense, but it means they held their focus on who they truly are throughout the beginning into what would be called the end, and there was no end. They literally merged with a shimmering of light and literally popped through what you could call the boundary of this reality. And all anyone has to do is go through that big searing hole right in the middle of the time space, and there's a time gate because they broke the construct. So at this point, all the soul energy, all the air is escaping out, and nobody has to stay in. And eventually, it's going to flip it inside out because it broke. They broke it. But you know, that's that sense that they're there in all of them because they never left, which is paradoxically they broke the rules. You know, well, because we're jumping, and you know, in the same sense, maybe we don't jump as much or something like that. It's not like a competition thing, but because we're basically bound to jump. All you have to do is set up you can have an anchor point that you return to. You can also set up a docking point that the next you is going to be attracted to and jump to the point where you have basically give yourself the impression, the experience that you're charging from some other place in order to get to the place you're at now. And these are methods to magnetically basically almost like creating that vacuum or that attraction to draw in more awareness. And in that state, you can create a connection to the place that you're not at. You can create a connection to the place that you're at before you're not here, which like doesn't make sense. Just like looking at it backwards through mirrors. And in that sense, you can contact the you that hasn't jumped here yet and change your perspective or your perspective of the you here and change aspects of reality and code it in literally as if you're the architect or you're something they call queuing, which is, they even have that in the movie Dark City that the guy can queue. That's actually what some of these Illuminati groups call it. There's no such thing as Illuminati. They invented that so people have a scapegoat to be mad at. But when you do that, imagine yourself before you got here changing things so that when you get here, you have them. You could, you know, the example of it is in this drawer, there's lemon pie or, you know, a key lime pie. And, you know, you focus so much that you go to the other reality and have the experience of entering that in to the point where when you actually know how to do it, it'll actually open the drawer and there'll be key lime pie in there. The point is you do it in a way, in a place with variables that you can't prove yourself wrong beforehand. And eventually things change, but it's not about pie. And basically the ultimate idea is it's not about materials. It's about knowledge or ultimately charged energy. You give yourself charge. And that's actually part, you know, the mapping of that, what Tesla looked at is certain orientations. It's the eternal regeneration pattern that the soul does automatically, and it never runs out of energy. It never runs out of variables. You get to the dead end, and you look at it a certain way, or you blink, or you spin around. It's just like being in a dream. You know, you have a doorway there or a wall, and you spin around in a dream with the intent of there being a door. You look back, and there's a door there. Same thing. How that works is it's like a mathematical procession, which completely deviates linear math as we see it. It's like a fractal pyramidal math or something like that, or spiral math. And it's that pattern is how the soul lives or grows. When you know the next layer of the pattern and you focus on it, your consciousness goes there. It's going to happen anyway because your soul's doing this all day, night. There's no end of it. It's the only motion is the soul through that space. Everything else is just a holographic frequency game. So the idea is when you consciously go over that pattern, you trace it in your mind, you can put yourself like a checkers match, jumping to reality, being there before you get there, because you already imagining yourself, preparing yourself for that. And one is the anchor for where you're going to come back to. One is like a dock or like a beacon where you're going to end up going to. And it's as if you strengthen where you're at. None of it makes sense physically because it runs off of the premise that you're not actually here right now. You're somewhere else. And by the time you get somewhere else, you'll finally be here. So, but it is what it is.
That's how many beings right now come and go through this earth plane, because they don't have to come through portals or anything like that anymore. And a lot of the millennials, or even like a younger generation now, they come with no history of any, they come in wholeness of being. So to them, to even hear like the history of earth or what happened yesterday, they don't hear you. They don't hear you because they come in the here and now, and they know that there is only this clip in the here and now. For example, you think that, okay, I decide to build a house, and then you're going through the process of building the house, and then you finish the house. No, building a house is in one universe, finishing the house is another universe, moving into in a house is another universe. They don't happen in the same realm. Nothing like that. So many beings come and go here at any given moment. Not everybody experiences Earth through the human so-called perspective, through the mind. Yeah, only through that limited perception of duality. And we have to be open to that, because the future beings, the so-called future children that are going to be born from now on, this is how they will come to have the experience of Earth. And they have to find beings like us that will understand them.
Oh yeah, I see that.
We gotta bridge the cultural things,
Yeah.
and the generations, and so we are the bridges on all of those levels. On all of those levels.
I see that in my grandchildren. I'm like the grandma that is like being a child with them, and I am teaching my 3-year-old granddaughter how to do art and stuff, and just letting her express herself, and I just want to be that grandma that, you know, has that little link that she's gonna, you know, have in her life. It's awesome. Both of them.
Yeah, you're muted.
Granddaughters.
Felicia, you're muted. Felicia, you muted.
Felicia, were you saying something? You're muted.
I'm keeping switching the buttons here. I don't know where I'm going. But because you have this awareness now, they can feel it, that they are not just bound by the time-space continuum. They're going to feel that through your osmosis. Just because you listen to this conversation, that's enough for them to have enough openness to express, hey, I'm not like you. I'm not bound by time and space. I have come here with a whole new perspective of what the Earth experience is, and it's got nothing to do with anybody else. Not at all.
Nothing to do with our bullshit history either.
You're breaking up, Lily.
Yeah, I think it's because we've been on this line for a long time. And this is what I say, that the younger generation, they don't want to solve our problems. We have to solve our own problems. Like, that's what I see. It's like people don't see that.
Lily, you're all robot on us.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
I think the the main idea is that what we conceive of as like God beings, the children that aren't bringing preconceptions and vulnerabilities to the system that are coming in now are actually God beings. They're, you know, everybody that's being born from here on is basically gods or are gods. And, you know, you can say the veil is down, the age of Aquarius ascension, whatever. It's just, you know, more natural energies are coming through, and that's what happens because that's what's actually out there, because it's beyond, you know, it's all those things that we said, how complex, how powerful, and how full everything is. Well, when you don't restrict that, that's what happens, that the possibilities are lessened, and if you put that in human form, okay, now you got to call it a god or something like that. Everyone that can just say, well, that happened, or that's what you think, or that's what some people hold, or, you know, whatever. Okay, that's a good idea. What else is there? That's a god, because nothing holds that back. So, you know, that's the key to, that's the basis of it. You know, the first step of being God is putting on your boots where you can go anywhere mentally, because nothing is going to hold you back.
Yeah, and we facilitated that, you know, through our awakening, through our understanding, through being anchored. That's why they can come here. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to come. Otherwise, no way, no way. God's beings are not sent into duality, you know, unless somebody is there to pave the way for them, to activate the living grid, to activate the pure essence of being, to put everything into place so they can be a vibrational match to a God being. We are preparing that ground of being. That's why it is amazing what we're doing. Yeah? We think we have this little life and everyday life, but look what we're doing in the middle of what time is it? It's your place?
It's 12:10, Felicia, our time.
It's our little, you know, lives, and here we are, solve all the problems of the world of today.
Absolutely, and many worlds, many underworlds, just by having this conversation.
Here's an interesting, oh, you can finish, Felicia, if you had something.
Oh, you go ahead.
I like playing. It's not a game, but it's the best way to look at it. When it gets nasty, everybody's like, oh, this isn't a game, this is whatever, it's serious. And when it's working effortlessly, it's like, this is the greatest game ever, it's beautiful, it's great. It's a game, whether it's getting kicked in the shins, or the person kicking somebody in the shins, or you're floating around on lily pads, or at least I look at it like a game. Also, I don't, because it's also a virtual system. It's the artwork, the maestro, the actual printing of the art. It's the formative process of visual art, digital programming. It's everything. So the good way to look at it in terms of challenge and overcoming it is like a game. I like that a lot because it's challenging. Imagine you like the state of the in-between because that's what you're used to. Okay, we're playing. You like playing interdimensional checkers, or the elite play 64-dimensional, chess. Okay, well,
yes, I actually like playing chess. This is fun.
And well, then rock paper scissors is kind of more. What happened?
Sell it next Christmas. Sell your checkers for next Christmas holiday.
Basically.
Yeah, they're not testing buttons. They're interdimensional checkers.
My son was 7 years old and he taught me how to play chess. He was in the chess club in school.
Chess is
all I had to remember was the moves, like L and, you know, all the, like the different things that the king and the queen can do. And the king can't do anything, hardly. The queen is the one with all the moves.
With all the power, and the king is the figurehead.
I think that's why Uggs wants to tell us something.
Well, chess is, I'm getting distracted now. I have a beard hair in my mouth.
Sorry.
Chess is, I'm sorry. Chess is a secret society, game designed by the secret society that's meant to symbolize society with the pawns, the authority, the certain close to the elite.
Yes.
Totally.
The main thing there is that in reality, there's no dominance of either gender, but in the ruling elite, it's actually the feminine energy which has the power, whereas the masculine, the male, they have no formative power. They can interact on the physical plane. They can't create. They can't give life. They can't actually basically provide the healing aspect that the female, the energy does. And in that sense, the overall creator is a feminine energy. It's actually both, but if we're going to personify it, it would be more feminine. And in the same sense, the original shamans, and Sha means female, the original healers, medicine men were women, and everything got distorted. The original monks or priests were women. That was the divine. Men couldn't hold the charge that was required for the original women who handled the connection to the divine. And as well, men were oriented in a different, like a schema or something, to the point where the information would be distorted. That's ego. It would be filtered by certain aspects that would relate to the dimension, the realm, the person, instead of the whole. As same as like the object versus the surrounding, the essence or the substance, the strength, masculine, formative part versus the material, the matter, the realm or the earth or whatever, versus the mind and the consciousness that's being formed or nurturing or being the receiving end of it. So there's all these interplays, and as it's reversed, it has to get flipped back around. But what was now I lost? I should have wrote it down.
About the chess
checkers.
game.
Interdimensional checkers.
Oh, well, that was the first, or the side concept. But then I like playing these interdimensional games, and so this is just a thought experiment. And as you take the thought experiment, you created the actuality of it. So don't, let the experience or the experiment run you off the road. But how many times, if we are jumping, have we jumped within this conversation to the point where we think we've been talking for the past 4 hours, when in reality, 2 seconds it began, and the backstory was instantly accepted because we're infinite beings that kind of just shift between whatever awareness that we want to, it's like the masculine and feminine, whatever awareness that we want to hold or accept or feel or project and create and shape, whatever it is, we do both of those all at once, and it is not limited in any degree, except by whatever's holding on to something. And if something's being held on to, only you can do that until there's something to learn from it. And there's something, it's like an idea family or a family of concepts. And that is as well how the control system works to map these parallels, because they give people what they're going to fear, what they're going to hold on to, what they're going to crystallize and form around and get stuck on. Like there's oil slick, but it's like tar sticky in the road. And then from there, they say, well, we caught so-and-so beings here, so-and-so there, and then they connect it all together, and we have this more or less technologically connected grid, which we think is society and Earth, and it's actually multiple parallels that are branched and organized by a central government, which it has nothing to do with the government that we see today, which is purposely supposed to look like a kid doing this with a clown nose on and a stupid haircut, because they're trying to make people realize that's not real. You can't control anything by force, by spirit, or by physicality, because if you try to grab spirit, and it's literally like a light show where it's like the Alex Gray pictures or the grids or something, and you squeeze it there and it just goes, and all the lights shoot out the grid and go that way, you can't actually hold anything. You can't hold anyone hostage. You can't do anything. All you can do is convince them to stay here because they think certain ideals or ideas are important to hold on to and stay around and attract. And that's basically the light trap, which is what's been going on. And it only lasts for a limited period of time. But the idea is, if the people who, resolve that and in a sense return and re-accept or reintegrate or I can't think of the word, reawaken, but basically retain their soul awareness while in this society, and enough members of society do that, then that combined effect of having that many awakened soul beings in the same plane that they've closed off all the exits to because people don't know how to get out now, it basically would create a permanent, not a containment at that point, but a permanent civilization that they wouldn't need the devices, the buildings, the soul tribe. They wouldn't need that stuff to keep people here, but as well, people wouldn't be kept here at all. It would be one of the first physical civilizations where people could go, leave physicality, leave the matrix, whatever you want to call it, go into whatever other stream of light that connects to, and when they want, come right back and do the same thing, or not the same thing, but have the same type of physically concrete or solid relative collective experience. It would be a cosmic collective civilization, which is the same. You like a dream. You spin in a circle in this one city. You do it again with the intent of going somewhere, and you time travel to another city, circa whatever year, and it would basically be like it's a process that all civilizations go through. We get a specific chance to do it. There's a window of time. We've actually been bending time so that we fit within the window of time, instead of like overlapping, which doesn't make sense, but you can dilate time. And so there's operations to make it work. And if, other civilizations that did this, we have no records of them because it looks like they all just disappeared in the air. Somebody abducted everybody. Nobody knows what happened. They all these stories, the worst thing in the world. Everybody disappeared one day. Well, clearly they did something right if, they collectively did something in one, simultaneous synchronized motion, to the point where it changed everything forever. And apparently it's not crystallization, but it's converting the information that's currently held within a magnetic processing system of this universe as like a dualized system, like a recording chip or a hard drive or something, where it's magnetic binary on and off. It takes that and converts it into a permanent standing wave, liquid, basically just liquid etheric system, as if it becomes the aurora borealis or something at that point, and it never dies. It doesn't age. It's not physical. It's always there. But entire civilizations transmit themselves from the physical plane into the higher plane, and that's the lower, Earth society going back into the heavenly realms above the earth, or whatever you want to call it. It's something that's been done forever because it's all that ever happens. And in the same sense, the beings who first made it, they're still alive now because the beings who make it never die. And in the same sense, everyone in your timeline, your bloodline, because you're connected to them through a quantum link, if one person in the family makes it, everyone eventually funnels through that person into higher space, and everyone makes it. And so progenitors were found both to collapse time into the matrix so people could roll over it, and then they take that process and maybe not undo it or reverse it, but they do the reverse with that, and the whole civilization basically gets propelled into a quantum, not lock, but an expanse state. And at that point, it's really weird, but the way it's described and stuff, I've seen is that there's no death, no disease, none of the stuff that limits us into a singular perspective. But it's all the benefits when it's done properly of why we have such an experience to begin with. Meaning we don't die, but it also doesn't mean that we lose the joy of living. Because if we never died and you were exactly who you are now, it would suck. It would be just like figuring out everything and being able to conceive it all in 5 or 10 thoughts or one book. It would suck. You'd run out of stuff to think about because you just had it all. Same sense, if we never died but never really continued to expand, this hell, is limbo. And so some of these beings in the cloned forms achieved because they were chasing what should have been a Christ ascension process of feeling and merging spirit with body, and they did it technologically. And so they entered in just like the original Hathors, who would take their kids, and eventually they would go on the path of learning, and they would get to the age where they could go through the final steps, and they would realize they're immortals, and all of a sudden the guy goes from 16, 17, 14, whatever, to 18, and they know everything. You can't ask him a question, anybody, any profession, and he doesn't know the answer. And that's starting to happen with the children here now, certain people. But so these guys did that and plugged in, and then all of a sudden, all they know is like demonology and suffering and pain and depravity, because they have the experience of being forever, but not wanting that because it was not wanted by the essence of their being, but their ego, their conscious mind. It's really weird, but it's like becoming the puppet that isn't you if it's attained and chased for the wrong reasons, which is why it's never forced on a person, and it doesn't happen just randomly, if you will. It happens through a graduation, an ascent, a graduated ascension through degrees. I don't even know where. Oh, but the idea was, if it is happening now, where were you really just? Well, I was here the whole time for hours. And technically, the longer we talk, the longer the chances are of that not being accurate. And if it's really true that we're infinitely doing this, well, technically, it happened infinitely times in the past any amount of time that you can look at. It's infinitely mixed in with other realities. And by thinking of it and going, well, was I here? Was I there? You're creating possible docking points that are to the anchors of those realities, which is where it begins. And when you fully form that from the beginning to the end and build a trajectory, and then you can jump into that and bounce to them. And again, you wouldn't just naturally do that or for fun or for no reason. If you're doing that, it's for a reason. That's why the experiences that you're having or have, happen. It's because there's some reason, there's some you in one of these places that is doing that. And it's the same thing for everyone else, whether you're intending to do it or not intending. But, if you basically don't come from clown realities, that never happens. Unless you clone yourself with a chip and you're just like, yeah, we're going to do this to rule the world because we can take over, and that makes sense. No, it doesn't. All you get is this slayed, nonsensical BS that's going to drive a person insane, and that's what happened. Luckily, there are groups here that can help with that because they needed them. And they would have dissolved atomically, and those that don't turn back from that will dissolve atomically, and it's worse than death.
Wow.
Well, right there about in the middle of what you're talking about, you're describing the Hyperboreans when you said that they can, they come into this earth plane, and then everybody knows them as, the ancestors of Romania, but they just basically anchor in their being, in that aspect of their being, and then they went back in simultaneity of being, so to speak. And and now everybody's trying to put them in the time, space, and history, and whether they migrated for the North Pole, which is really, I'm laughing my ass off about that one, because they never migrated from anywhere. They're not a migratory race, and because the mind always tries to, figure out in what time and space and history they existed, what location, and it's like, no, it was they grounded the experience of being the living library, yeah, and then they were called, they also, a lot of people do not know this, but after the flood, yeah, they jump-started life on Earth here, because because the human genome, yeah, is within the living library, so they jump-started again life after Atlantis.
I was going to ask about, probably it was maybe a year, not even a year ago, we looked into the Bach people. You guys heard about the Bach people? And they were in the center of the pole. They came out of it was like the P in the pole, and they came out of the center of the pole. It was supposed to be, they remind me a lot of the Hyperborean race. Like maybe it's just another aspect of that.
Hyperborean are not a race. They're not a race.
People.
Yeah, they are not a race.
No, but I think it's a story, like a legend from, it's just another legend from that. Like they were in the center, they came from Middle Earth, and it was like, there's if you look up on YouTube, it talks about the Bach people, and it's the Bach people legend, and it totally cracked me from the inside out. Probably about 8 months ago, we were all looking at it on ESG, but it really made me look at reality in a different way.
It was told in more of a metaphorical story way.
Inner Earth means empty of fear.
Yeah.
That's the true meaning of
Yeah.
inner earth.
So
Like
this, like the Bach people, it was a metaphor, like Lily said. And
Yeah.
yeah, they were empty of fear. It made me look at things in such a different perspective. And it was really hard to digest from a lot of people's point of view. But like me, I go into everything, I peel back so many layers and, you know, dive into it, hit the bottom, come back up again, breathe some air. But yeah, I just wanted to ask if you heard anything, if you've listened to anything like that.
Well, that's an energetic blueprint of a metaphorical way of speaking about until we get what really inner earth means. Because again, we think it's in the inner of the earth, and it's just another realm of being that is empty of fear. Just think of your inner being. Yeah? There is no fear there. So then you have those kind of metaphorical or civilizations that actually embody that. Every civilization that embodies the absence of fear or the wholeness of being could be called inner earth. Now we're really going into what Olga is trying to explain, that everything is for the experience of it. And the metaphor, and we try to describe the experience of it through a metaphor. The metaphor is the mirror of that direct experience.
And that's the way I always view life. Like even if I'm gardening or painting or doing anything, I always have to visualize it and put it through my body in like a simple metaphorical way so that I can, it's my way of digesting or embodying. I guess I embody everything that I experience so I can make it my own, because I don't like to speak through the head. I speak through my being, you know.
Oh yeah, forget about the head. Talking to the head.
It's hard for me to explain.
I want to say we have all the myths or the legends. We have, like Felicia said, they're metaphors, and these metaphors are ways of understanding what we're trying to describe, which isn't actually here, because there is no singular version of what's happening, and only when we see that it's all this continuous happening, that's what's actually happening. But how do you describe that? It's like describing something that doesn't have a shape, sight, or a sense. It's just a feeling. Or in the easy way to understand that, to encapsulate that, is how do you describe color to a person who's never seen color, never seen, or blind from birth? And describe color to them. It very quickly drives home the point. The sensation of perception is not only not actually in a way something that you can, it's happening, you can touch it, it's a thing. And as well, what we're in now, it does nothing to describe what actually perception is. You can say it's red, and the guy has seen red before goes, yeah, that's red. But without him actually seeing that, or her, there's no way to actually make that happen without telepathically sending it to somebody. So we're all in our own world, and we're basically, the idea of that is that really all we have is metaphor. No one's actually getting anyone else. We're only just kind of beating around the bush and coming up with ideas, and because of the feeling, that drives home the experience in a person's life. And if the person hasn't had that experience, it's going to mean nothing to them. So all we're doing is reflecting ourselves in one another. Self-reflection of a person back into ourselves, pings off, gives like a beacon of understanding, and the two experiences just kind of shine at each other, and we get that recognition. There's really nothing actually happening. We can't actually communicate what we're saying to each other. We just use this broken symbolic language, which eternally doesn't actually mean anything. It doesn't send anything. That's why eventually non linear language, which goes into hieroglyphics and then goes to symbols and then goes into basically telepathy, where the person just knows what you're saying, because what else would you be thinking at this point in time? All the way to the point where there was a post, it was a meme post, but it was actual, and this is something in the projects, everything, we have infinite time, so everything that's I've seen in this life I've seen before. Weirdest thing. I try to explain that in the Global Mind post where I was in the woods in some of my room. But the idea is that there was the Aborigine, I think it was the Aborigine, and a European, like a poacher or something like that, showed the dark-skinned Aborigine his cell phone, and the Aborigine was amazed. And the European guy was like all proud and nonchalant, like, you know, what do we got? And the other guy was like, this must be it. Like, this is the reason why you're cut off from each other, because you developed a toy, a method, a pathway that you now require to communicate across long distances. When we go out for a hunt, or, you know, the shamanic vision quest or whatever it is, we meet up, and this is, I'm extrapolating, but this is actually what they say, you know, we meet up because we both got the desire to come to this place and meet with this friend, because we thought of each other at the same time, and we said, hey, come meet here. And we called each other on the brain telepathy cell phone, not brain, the heart. And so they have it automatically. And, you know, these people with guns and clothes and stuff like that, you know, everybody has clothes, but they had like all the get up and the insignia and stuff. It's like all this outward display of who you are. And now you have this device to do something that everyone that I know automatically does it. Very strange, but there you see how the natives, in that sense, which native is even a corrupted term. It means, you know, a form of non-sovereign. It literally back then meant like, who's going to be our next slave, and that's where the word evolved from, the etymology. But you see how they could look at the people coming in with technology basically and be like, you're backwards. Everything you do based on what you're doing with that Western mindset and technology, and taking what's already here in you and making it physical, it takes you away from the benefit of having what you already have within you. It ruins the whole experience. What you're trying to create by these things is ruin what you already had. It doesn't make sense. But the idea is that originally we have all these metaphors, they're memories of these other realms, of the actual us that has been everywhere. So we know everything that has happened. And in that sense, if you look at the possibilities and the history and try and work out what it means, you can actually access that database or whatever it is and see everything that's there. But over time, we have that passed on blueprint, the story from ancestors and things like that, you know, the beginning, and over time it degrades or degraded. It doesn't have to for everybody, but in the majority, that's what happened. And so we end up with the original, and it's a blueprint, and then a piece of the blueprint goes missing, and then a character of it goes missing, and then the beginning of it, and then the end, and then the middle. And then we end up with a story that completely has nothing to do with what it actually was, until we end up with the exact opposite. And we have from a shining, you know, glorious presentation of eternity and fearlessness, and the inside of the self of being the frequency of the middle path, neutrality, no fear, in reality, in contact with the soul, not on the outside, in the center, non-polarized, in neutrality and pure observation, and it becomes a realm of demons under the ground, and it's uncomfortable and hot, and there's all this BS going on, and we got to run when we see them, and it becomes literally the opposite of what it was. And so, but by knowing that and getting the schema for what's been going on, you can actually undo all that we think we know and realize. And that's why it's the most funniest game and trick to be here and joke, because the smartest person is the one who everyone thinks is the dumbest because they didn't learn a damn thing in school or wherever whatever people told them. I mean, part of it, that relates to something, but it's basically that's one fraction of the pie. Because
so you go down and stay in the center, either go technology or you go love and light, or you stay in the center.
More or less, yeah. There's one way to look at it.
That was something I learned like years ago. That old.
I could think of a way to expand on that, but I'll probably think of it afterwards and finish it before. I have it written down, but basically make it as if it's alive, and then continue all the lines to the point where they add up to a not a whole reality, but they add up to equaling back to themselves, and that at every new step, the original was also present. And
Right.
You'll slowly like, do things to it, it'll become something, and that's like the beginning of it. That, when you can do that and you break them down, you end up with symbols, and that's literally the language, to the point where eventually it'll come back around where we'll speak in like hieroglyphs. It look like Japanese, but instead of Japanese is hieroglyphs broken down into stupid people language, which, you know, but also it contains the format, the density, because you can have, you know, not only something about Japanese, but just human language, written language, because it contains like every symbol or letter is like a word and a sentence in itself at that point. And it takes like 3 or 4 words to describe every, you know, collection of shapes, which are like characters in Chinese or Japanese. They're more complex. And so you use less of them to get the same amount of ideas across that you would use for like 3 sentences in English.
Yeah.
But so the idea is that there's a magnetic null point in that assemblage point, the convergence, the center, the neutrality zone. And so that's the center of reality. And when we're in the center, we're actually seeing it. And when we're actually seeing it, there's no fear. Which, you know, that's, and so if we're in the earth now, because you wouldn't say the rays of the sun, the rays of the sun are the, I'm going to jump to it, are the actual sun, while as much as the surface is. So we're in the sun now as soon as the sun is, you know, beaming on us. In the same sense, we're in earth now, the 2 realms overlap. And so we're in inner earth now. We're also in the middle frequency between higher and lower, but we're polarized mentally in one or the other in this like flip-flop of duality where we're not quite in, we're not quite out. And in that sense, we're kind of just spinning tires. We don't actually end up going anywhere. And so the inner earth then, if it's also relative to that being the self and the frequency layers being our self and our attention, is when we're harmonized, neutralized, as well balanced, and in that expression of soul where there's no fear. And again, the original is that, the degraded version, 100% opposite. It's full of fear and boogeymen and a bunch of silly stuff that drives people away from the truth. And the point is, because even if that is down there, well, guess what? Remember that big reality spectrum? That's what's really there. There's also the jump pad, frog, lily pad, dragonfly, crazy nonsense stuff that exists too. Everything exists. And then so there's that, and then the other point, and it's deviations and distortions, which is where you got the line and there's a deflection at a certain degree of separation. And it's the idea I'm trying to say, as well as that, because that's the basis of it, is that the deviations go in 360 degrees, and the actuality is all of them at once where they center from, because that's what's being deviated from, because there's only one center, and it's actually not anything. It doesn't exist. It doesn't have a shape. And so in that sense, one thing before the final point is that the Hyperboreans, it's like a toroid where one string that's going through and vibrating through and spiraling around is connected to the other string, as if it's there are strings that are doing it, where if you've seen the toroid flow and how it like arcs in and around itself, there were strings, they'd all be connected, and when you pull on one, the other one rotates around there, and it's like a big grid. So when they come in as an entire layer at once, to the point where they come in here, and instantly we have 1,000 years of how they formed humanity, 10,000 BC or something like that, and how in the far future they're there. They come in as a whole timeline of being, and when they go out, they usually obviously, you know, don't come in and drop everything out and, you know, do it that way. It's like a effortless merge, and as well as if they blend in, they merge, and you can't even tell when they came in. It's just, it seems that it was always there. But because that's happened, we've been graced with the experience, the visitation of the creators, the progenitors will always have that blueprint in this reality, and ultimately that's what people will end up leading themselves towards, which you can't do that unless you have the original blueprint. It's not like, oh, they came in, they stole it. The whole history, thousands of years, and it's like artificial surgery, that's because they tried to do that same thing from inside the system with technology, opening stargates and forcing themselves through, and they used children to access the frequencies because they couldn't do it without their minds fractured and the adults coming back going like this and rolling around on the ground.
Wow.
But,
so Og, about the giant trees, you know, the giant trees, the
my favorite topic.
silicon trees, how, like, and then they were like cut, because like there's so much proof and evidence that you know, those mountains that are, you know, like, you know, all over. We even have like the silicon, Rockstar Silicon Tree Group, even that we had to start because of that. What is your take on that? Is that just a layer? Was that real? Like it was like Avatar, the movie Avatar at one time? Like, was Earth like that?
Well, again, even in the like the groups, the agencies, or agency is a bad word, it has bad connotation or negative. It has a polarized connotation, whether it's one or the other, positive or negative. You know, people are gonna anyway. The last part that I was saying is that since there is no singular one, this goes into what you're questioning, inquiring.
Yeah.
I don't want to say like requesting that I answer.
No, I just want your take on it.
And you want my rant?
Yeah.
Well, there is no single assurity, since there is no absolute. All we have is metaphors, riddles, what could be, what was, but wasn't always, what will be, but won't be forever. It's always a never-ending story. It's always, it has to be an and consciously in the soul and in awareness, we actually have some type of ability to see it all, and no one knows what that's like. But because that is happening, this is like the moon bounce, where it's just an endless game where you do whatever you want, you create whatever you want. Sure, a-holes took a hold of that, but the idea with that is also that if we're making this cosmic civilization, one time or another, someone's going to do that. If it happens, but it doesn't happen all at once, meaning it's in like sporadic things or, you know, waves, the cosmic civilization is probably going to be destroyed by the occurrences of that turbulence taking effect. So they're forcing it all to happen now and putting them all in the same cage. And then from there, selectively, people are basically like ascending out. And as well, when that process is done, it will never, the darkness will never have a foothold ever again. But it's weird because they created it to get to that point. But, you know, I'm not going to sit there and look into it further, because then you're just it's going to run in the Ouroboros system.
That makes sense.
But the, right, you know, but the, so there's only metaphors. And then, so what realm is the real one? The way in the groups they say is, well, yeah, that one exists as well as the one where that never existed. Because this is how it is. As well, they also branch from one where everything existed and in a way nothing existed. The two sides look at it differently, the East and the West. But the idea is, so there's logical assertions for it. This was in the No Forest, and then like the Soul Trap and like certain other. It's like I need to like title my videos, but again, there's no video, there's no title, it doesn't matter. But I've expressed that in the way I title my posts and the videos, because they're just like collections of words. So that's what really anything.
Okay. So you did a video on No Forest?
A slight one. Me and my friend chatted in the car, and I found it interesting. A lot of people found it interesting. I'm sure.
I didn't listen to that one. I'm gonna have to go back and look at that one.
It touches on it. What I'm about to say is what the basics of what was talked about there, which is basically that since it's a observation dependent realm, meaning when nobody's watching, it disappears, in the sense that it's not a void where there was once a big earth and now it's an empty space, and it's not like a placeholder. It's literally neither there or not there. It disappears from categorization. You could also say it's dark void, there's nothing there, as well as it's all light, everything is there. It moves out of the realm of what we think it would be. And so that's the basis of what is happening here. And anybody that says otherwise, there's a lot of things holding them back, but ultimately they're either going to say that until they die and be forced to realize it, and then that version of themselves will never match up to who they were when they lived, because it's about self-responsibility and whether you're going to take advantage for it, and subconsciously saying, I did some things that I'm not proud of, and so I'm not going to accept that it's my perception and my awareness that did that. Somebody else that's doing that, and that's what that language means.
Yeah, like for me, that language of the No Forest video brought me into another awareness of our state of being right now on Earth, and made me more aware of like where we're going with like cutting down the forests and mining and oil field and all that kind of stuff. And even with the Avatar video and stuff like that, it just it just seemed like it was at the right time to like wake up more people, like on another level. And it just shocked like my whole world. Like it just, that was like, I thought I was awake before the trees video. And like that, like, honestly, when I saw that, I was like, for like 3 weeks, I was like, you know, we had to, it just made me see things from another perspective, you know? It was just totally opening for me.
And as well, anything that polarizes is making a person grab onto what they think is, and it's really just a big field of energy. So that's also, it polarized you, but it polarized you away from what you were before, what you were thinking before. And so then just return to neutrality and realize the underlying is that it's, you know, you have the choice, and the inversion of the underlying of the awareness of self-control is saying that, well, since it doesn't matter, we can chop down all the trees, blow everything up, kill all the natives, and it really doesn't matter. And that's what the negative inversion of the groups that realize we're gods, we create everything, we can do anything. There's nothing wrong with that, because that has an effect on you, what you do. Even if it doesn't matter, it's a video game, you're playing a game of shooting and violence, your brain perceives that as reality. It cannot determine the difference. Because that is so, that means that's actually what's happening to the energy of the being playing the game. In the same sense, even if you know it's a simulation or a dream or whatever it is, you know, the etiquette, the cosmic etiquette still applies. And that's why it's so hard to get into heaven. Really, it's not. You just, you know, have to let go and not hold on to the grudges, and then stand strong in that, stronger than that which holds you back, or the part of you which is afraid from taking responsibility. And that's where this whole society is. It's a satanic inversion where nobody's allowed to take responsibility. And because of that, nobody's supposed to. And because of that, everybody's being told and forced to. And because of that, we're going to punch each other in the face and steal each other and go to war with each other. And it's A-okay. Complete nonsense, cosmic insanity, absolutely the opposite of what any sentient being would do in any situation, in any plane, in any point in time. And so the idea is that both of them or all exists. And so then as well, and I get this a lot with people who look at my material and say, it seems like at some point in my existence, I've observed this stuff before. And so it's like there's some familiarity with whatever is happening. You can go to the bathroom right now since you're the of the response. You could have just said that. But I hope I'm not ranting. I don't know how I still have energy. I drink a lot of coffee, but
Are you on the East Coast?
Yeah, it's 4 o'clock now.
Almost.
It just keeps going more and more information.
Well, because the chat is full of living beings. We can go for 3 days and we'll never be tired. We'll probably feel more energized than ever before. That's why. That's how beautiful it is to be among each other.
Right on. Right on.
Yeah.
Romeo's been purring. He's been purring the whole time.
There is so much stuff about that, about where cats come from and the lore of cats and humans and how everything works. You would be so surprised to hear what certain people in the government or these groups, it's not the government, but that's the easiest way to describe it, you know, could tell you or say or claim. Not what we think.
No, not at all. The feline race is another subject we can get into at some point. What the feline race truly means.
He looks like a Hathor, my cat. Little Hathor.
Yeah.
Well, he is the 13th living being present at this time.
Oh.
There's 12 of us plus him. There you go.
Hello, Dr.
You're welcome, everybody.
More presence than everybody combined. All of us combined.
He's so cute.
Can you hear him? Be real quiet.
Purring. He looks like Yoda.
Yeah, he's been purring the whole
He
time.
does. He looks like Yoda. Look at him.
There he is.
He looks like an owl now.
Yeah, he kind of does. Yeah, he's different looking.
Definitely not a cat. He's not a cat. Wow, he's amazing.
Anyway, here we are. Right, Rome?
Well, we should do this once a week, I think.
Okay, it's my time here almost. Great.
We're losing Lily.
Lily,
Oh, it's early for me.
it's morning for you now, Lily.
Yeah, pretty soon I gotta go in between that, you know, in the morning when time starts. Ooh, I love that, you know, get in that space you guys were talking about earlier. In between, you know, that in between.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh.
Great. Lily,
What a place.
amazing.
That's
I
my
have
place.
to go there right away too. Now I'm not going to be guilty. I'm not going to feel guilty.
Good, Trudy. I think.
That's just, wait.
Go ahead.
You're really chopping up. I think your computer's memory is maxed out from the recording.
Probably.
Mine does it too.
We can read. We know what you're saying, Lily. You're saying, well, this is amazing. Thank everybody for coming here. And it's been a memorable evening for everybody. Can't wait to
See you next Thursday.
make
same
it into
time.
something. Do you
We
guys?
can have another 8
You guys
hours.
again. I love all you guys. Lily's saying I love all you guys, and thank you so much.
Before we go, look at the video if you want a more complete answer to that idea, question, whatever. And then it's just based on observation being the shining light that manifests reality, if you will, and the fact that if there's more oxygen in earlier times, and so if trees were larger, then you wouldn't fly a plane up there and you have a floating fortress or flying fortress, and it wouldn't be, you'd go up there now, you hit a grid, a boundary, whatever, there's nothing there because nobody's observing. Say there were larger creations, more oxygen, trees, bigger beings flying around, societies living in tree cities or whatever you want to call it. Well, you could go up in a plane 30, 40,000 feet, 100,000 feet, and instead of a barrier or space or nothing there, whatever, you'd have realms or areas above us that were in different frequencies because there were the earth saying, hi, hello, how are you doing, who are you? And growing up with these huge, enormous expansion packs to this reality, and the reality got bigger and more complex with more beings and bigger things in it. Jack and Jill, well, Jack and the Beanstalk, things like that. Not Jack and Jill, that's another story. But Jack and the Beanstalk, things like that, where you don't have reality of giants here, but say you had a big tree that stretched the perception of this reality, and you go up there and you find big giants walking around or whatever. Yeah, this is both what I thought it would be, what I didn't think it would be, and way beyond either of, preconceptions for this concept, and that's also, or this talk, this chat, that's also the concept of what things are. It's like Schrodinger's cat. That's why the cat's here. It's a representation of both possibilities depending on how we conceptualize it. And in the end, the only reality is the metaphor that we come up with that connects it all into one big storyline. It's like a never-ending story. That's why the conscious mind fails to categorize, conceive it, and you only get struggles when you try to force it to make sense that way. But
yeah, it's the same with the story of the ringing trees. You know, the trees have always been ringing. It's just, was there anybody there to hear them? Again, that's the same thing. So.
exactly.
And yeah, just like with everything else. But all right, so shall we say let's see each other again soon?
Yes.
I think so. 8 hours? We've been at it for 8 hours.
Really?
Oh dear.
Yeah.
All right.
4 and
Yeah.
5, that's 9 hours.
Oh, wow.
I was the math teacher, but anybody can figure that out at this hour. I don't know. But next time we talk about cats.
Wow, I did a 9-hour chat and I was way more tired than I am now.
No, not this one. This one is not tiring anybody. I can go and clean my house and bake a cake.
One last thing I want to say, which is that just like when it's there and observed, it exists. Every possible you exists. All you have to do is come up with the way of observing it or imagining it. So the idea is, well, imagine the one that you know comes from the most centralized value, which is the heart aspect, the compassionate aspect. That's the one where you have the most to give, and it's the least lacking and scarce and low energy one.
That's the one I'm embracing right now in my life.
That's perfect said. And then you can say that exact same thing about collective humanity too.
There's a big version, relatively whatever size, but of all of us, of humanity that never died, never has died.
Never had any, never.
That's possible in reality, and the one we're in now is the side version. It's the daydream that seems convincing. And the real possibility of what's there is, it doesn't make sense in the sense of what's going on here. So limited here. But
Yeah.
it does exist.
It does exist, and the resonance of that, the resonance that we have, can filter through the one that collective consciousness of humanity think is the only possibility. And that's another way of changing it. Through that resonance or through that knowing it, that it does exist. It's as simple as that. That's a living technology. Just like we were talking yesterday, or was it the day before yesterday with Betsy, about coconut pie, and we said, just think, because that was her preference, the coconut pie. So now, because that is a preference and she really enjoys eating a coconut pie, if you take that resonance, that feeling of liking that will filter, and you carry that throughout, you stay anchored, and that feeling, what she has, the resonance, the harmony, because you totally harmonize your coconut with your coconut pie when you like it,
Yeah.
Then you will carry the harmony all throughout your day and your life and your collective and this universe through just eating a simple coconut pie. And that is living technology.
I want to add one more thing real fast,
All right.
which is that I've realized how this ties in too. The other civilization is waiting, or our true civilization is waiting for us. And so you think, well, time doesn't exist. How long have they been waiting? And whenever a timeless civilization begins to do something, they end up doing that forever. So it's like, well, technically they've been waiting forever. But then you think, well, are they coming here because they messed up or something, they're going to become us, or are we returning to them and going back to that because we're doing something right? And the idea is whatever is eternal is the real one, if you will. And so if this one is in a way unsustainable or based upon the superficial, it's the external, it's the temporary, it's the illusory. And so then we began in the one that is eternal and sustainable and makes sense in the overall cosmic view. So that means we must be returning to that one. We can only be coming or going, but it begins and ends with that one. That's how every story begins and ends. Wherever we end up, we already showed you, it goes anywhere you can fathom. And so then the idea is that when everybody gets around to manifesting the frequencies within themselves, or more so embodying and emitting those frequencies, then manifesting that realm, if you will, that's when we basically merge back into what was already there. And really our awareness is just centering back where the seat of the soul, or the central realm, the actual expanse, inner earth, whatever you want to call it. And in the same sense, we've been doing it forever. It's like we're stuck, it's limbo. As soon as you start, because it's the infinite cycle, now we began to wait. We're going to wait for eternity until somebody snaps us out of that cycle. It's related to only when I think I only have 5 seconds left can I wrap up what took like a half hour to describe before. It probably would have taken a half hour to describe, 15 minutes right here going on and on in like 3 sentences real fast. It's observation-based stress that add more variables. There you go. You have extra realm because the Earth expanded it for us. We can't actually do it because we don't have big flying fortresses, which is one of the Nazis' programs, by the way, to make flying fortresses to expand the realm and access other dimensions. And so, but that's the same thing. Earth, I'm like, the typical earthling, non-earthling. When people know or think they only have 5 seconds until the end of the world, or 20 years, or whatever it is, that's when they're going to be like, all right, we got to really knuckle down and do this. We're going to merge with what we really want and create it, and have our pie or whatever, and end up there. And it's the same thing. It's it doesn't have to be that way, but that's the fastest way to it, which is it sheds light on this whole situation from a different perspective. It should give you a funny feeling if you think about it the right way. It's like a big joke, but it's as serious as can be, but it results in eternity, and it came from it. I'm not going to keep going. Thank you for letting me ramble for probably the segment of hours that I did out of this whole thing. I have no idea it was that long.
Yeah.
So
we get
for ourselves. So it's like a mirror trick. All right, now I'm done.
We can ramble for another 8 hours within a week or so. And then, yeah.
If everybody energizes, rests, and feels like there's another one of these that we're anchoring to now and we'll be docking to in the next reality, whatever reality we happen to meet up with again or project ourselves to collectively, then send another message out and it will happen. Thank you. I think
can you hear this meeting happening in multiple realities also?
Yes.
I believe it would have to, because of the amount of information that we're coming from. If we just said like a TV show that talked about that, it's like, there's probably only a few of those. We're talking about things we're talking about here. It's happening everywhere. It's the internet TV of realities, and by participating in that, we're also gaining reality rep together. That's another thing. I'm going to not go on anymore, but that's another thing. Join together in this creates a reality that we're in. It's the blueprint idea. And the bad guys join together with the opposite of the intent, and that strengthens that reality. And as long as people don't realize we're all doing this, whether we're joining for one or the other, but when we join together for something that influences the collective, that works. But now that this is happening, people are joining together in self-awareness, then, again, the highest attention prevails, and the laugh energy, the cute cat energy, whatever you want to call it, from this is 1,000 times more strong than people who collude and meet in private for the opposite of that in ignorance. They have to do that. They have to stay up on coke and meth for weeks at a time just to get an hour of what's gone on here with the influence that happens, which is It's just how it is. It's, you know, it's not shameful for them or competition or anything. It's just what it is. Soon they'll be the monsters that realize they can get more power when they make people laugh and they you know, share. So thank you. I think Lily's behind a veil of internet lag. So yeah, thank you everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Everybody. It was so amazing just interacting with you, Og, and getting to know you more on this personal level. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I enjoyed everybody. Everybody that spoke. Everybody spoke well.
Everybody, like having everybody here, and you're my family. I love you guys. Have a good night.
Night, everybody.
Night.
I'll probably be up until sunrise.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning to some of you.
Good morning.
Yes.
4 in the afternoon.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Bye, everybody.
Look,
So that collective is throughout time.
Mirella's already in our future, and it's looking great.
That's true. Anchored this in all the whole way around the world. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's for a reason.
Yeah, we did it. We did it, you guys. We did it. We
Thank
anchored
you.
it. I love you all. I don't know if you can hear me.
Lily. Love you all.
Love all you guys. Mwah.
Mwah.
Give me